Chapter 573, A Dark Scheme. We have established a game channel of Discord server and play Among Us and other games over there. You can find the link in the end of the chapter. Things happened in rapid succession by the past 3 days. In Whiterun, Wulfr worked with the companions on restoring pieces of an axe known as Wuthrad, which is considered as a cultural treasure in Skyrim, and especially to the companions. As they got a lead on the first fragment being buried somewhere north of Whiterun in Dustman's Cairn, Wulfr and Farkas embarked on the quest together, and during their excavation, they were ambushed by a group called the Silverhand. This group is made of werewolf hunters who are aware of the secret that the companions' inner circle is a den of werbeasts. Even more, those Silverhands were once companions long ago, before a failed attempt to end the lycanthropy tradition of the companions by hunting down the witches responsible for it. After being degraded to the level of common bandits, they didn't even give up and went after the Wuthrad fragments in order to prove their legitimate claim as the ones worthy of the legacy of the companions' founder, Iskramor. In Rift Inn, the Thieves' Guild was slowly building up power on 2 divided fronts. The ones that sucked up to Maven were Mercer Fry and his lackeys. While the division was unclear to outsiders and kept behind closed doors, Mercer was slowly hoarding support from Maven Blackbriar and her associates. On the other hand, Delvin Mallory was staying out of these businesses and kept close contact with Winterhold through Sparrow Jelliner. Speaking of which, she was doing jobs for both Mercer and Delvin that varied from small-time burglaries to big-time heists. She even learned how to fake ledgers, attempt frauds, bribe people, and reel in support from the wretched poor folks. After the Golden Glow Estate incident, Jelliner was supposed to be summoned by Maven for another business opportunity, but Maven was too busy with Riffin's inner workings and scheduled the meeting for a week from now. In Winterhold, the progress was simply unprecedented, so there is no need to mention how capitalism is the most perfect thing that ever happened to humanity over there. On the other hand, Alina was in the middle of handling the war situation brewing outside the hold when she heard of some strange happenings. It seems that the 2 armies of the Imperials and the Stormcloaks have stopped their march in a bizarre situation of neither fighting nor retreating. As a holder of an official badge of office, Alina, she went ahead with a team of elites made of Isha, Mirren, Miranda, and Ela in order to investigate. There, they found the 2 armies drinking together. Yes, drinking and dancing and celebrating. John has mentioned that he will take care of any fight that happens around the hold, but Alina always imagined something brutal to happen, not 2 armies completely submerged in liquor and drunkenness. Once she tried to look around, she found a very pleasing-looking woman walking around the 2 armies half-naked and making sure everyone is more drunk than what they already are. This, of course, is Venus, the manifestation of lust. Alina recognized the aura of lust right away and ordered it to go back to Winterhold, while she found the commanders of the 2 armies and attested them for breaking the peace agreement with Winterhold. In the rest of Skyrim, the situation of the war was coming to a halt due to winter, but that didn't stop the influence of Winterhold from spreading. The Pale and Eastmarch were mostly DDC territory, and what came next was the decision of whether to move to Whiterun or Jalmarch, but John didn't want to take this step without consulting with Vittoria Vici. Away from John and all the business shenanigans, New Sarthel was having a quiet winter night as John Rad sat outside his manor against a bonfire as he read a message directed to him that arrived from Dawnstar. "Father, Alina, my child, what brings you in this hour?" Appearing before John Rad was his daughter-in-law, Alina. She seemed to be wearing a large fur cloak and still donning 2 swords on her left side. The look on her face showed both emptiness and a myriad of thoughts. "You look like you need a drink." John Rad joked around. "Anything good? Mead? Well, John no longer keeps drinks in the house, so mead it is." Alina joined John Rad on the bonfire and chugged the mead from the bottle, letting go of all her lady manners. "You look worse than I am," John Rad said. "Father, you are retired." "Indeed, I was an officer, a spy, an escapee, and a bandit at some point," John Rad said and made a cold face. "But don't ever think that parenthood is something as easy. Between those 2 demons on legs, I'd rather be thrown back into the war." John Rad then laughed with Alina as he kept complaining about Thor and Idun. Father, both you and I know that raising Thor and Idun can't be compared to what I do. And that is raising John. Oh, I wouldn't want to do that, so I'll shut up. Jonrad drank a bit, then asked, "Where is that unhandsome son of mine? Last time I saw him, he said he will mingle with the Dark Brotherhood or something." Just as she mentioned the Dark Brotherhood, Jonrad spat out the liquor he drank on the bone fire, causing it to look like a dragon breath of some kind. "That's not mead." Alina pointed at Jonrad's tankard. Cough, vodka," he said as he cleared his throat. "You just said the Brotherhood?" Alina nodded as she found the vodka bottle nearby and started filling up her tankard from it. Why would he mingle with them? He said that the Brotherhood is one of the 4 factions he needs to take over in order to secure. She made 2 quotation marks with her fingers. Fate. Bah! Jonrad seemed upset about it, but not too upset. "Father? No, I got reminded by the damn Brotherhood, just from this letter, and now you're telling me John wants to contact them. I can't figure him out." Jonrad said, waving around the letter he has. "What's with the letter?" Alina asked. "Just an old friend," Jonrad said dismissively. "Father, I just came to ask you." "I know." Jonrad nodded. "You want to know about the Brotherhood? I trust John with a lot of things, Father. It is just when he is driven like this, I don't seem to fathom him either." Alina said, hanging down his head while observing the flow of the liquor she poured in the tankard. "I know." Jonrad nodded. "You are right. This letter is from a friend who used to have to do with the Brotherhood. Well, before we betrayed them, I guess. We?" Alina narrowed her eyes. "Yes, we. My friend and I were 2 stranded souls who fought wars in our wake and wars in our nightmares. I know him from the war, the Great War. He was a hero, a forgotten one, or to be more accurate, he was someone whose name never came out to be forgotten in the first place. But he is a good friend. He just arrived at Skyrim over there in Dawnstar. He is not visiting? No, he seems to be chasing some sort of treasure. Just like John, there is always a trophy that is driving him around." Jonrad said and laughed. "Tyr went to meet him, though. I see. So what did the 2 of you do to the Brotherhood?" Alina's question caused Jonrad's face to darken and his expressions to crumble. Painful, no. Hateful memories surfaced. Power always has a price. I hate those words, but to acquire a power that you shouldn't have, you need to do things that you may not be proud of. I wanted to revive the tradition of Dragon Knights. I hit a dead end, and just like my son, I made a deal with the Daedric Prince. Do 7 tasks, get what you want. Both his labors, right? I was in High Rock in those times. John and you were around 7 or 8. I couldn't come to Skyrim, since I wasn't strong enough to go through our enemies, and I promised. I promised Hilda to acquire that power that would keep her and John safe. Heh, back then things used to be too simple. Get powerful, solve your problems, go home. Jonrad gazed at the starry skies as he remembered the old days. Bothia is not that bad at High Rock. In a land submerged by political schemes and assassinations, every now and then, folks have gotten used to the Prince of Plots. The deal wasn't even half bad. I got to kill 7 sinners who caused a great deal of pain to people. The first 5, they were the easiest to kill. Then I met my old friend and our quests intertwined. He acted as the front, I acted as the shadow. Jonrad kept telling Alina the story of his first 5 kills as labors to Bothia. He was silent, efficient, and his actions saved hundreds of lives. He even got to save a kingdom and do some of the escapades like what his son is doing right now. When the story came to the part where he met with his old friend, he stopped it there. "Cunning girl, you're getting me drunk to talk? I didn't even give you any drink, father," she said with a faint smile. "Heh, all right." He stood up unshaken even with the amount he drank and removed the snow off his shoulder. "I'll tell you the rest of the story later." "When?" Alina called. "When John arrives. He'll need to know it at some point." Jonrad left Alina on a cliffhanger, making her a little dejected. A mischievous grin appeared on her face as she decided to give him a spoiler of her own. "John found the coffin of the Night Mother," she said. Jonrad stopped his pace and turned to her. "The luck, old lady?" He then raised the letter in his hand. "I already know. TSK. That's not fair." "Aha." The pale, Sheerpoint. Serana flew backward like a rag doll and hit the wall of the mountain. Still lively as ever and barely injured, she sprung up again, baring fangs and brandishing claws literally. "I'll never break," she screamed as she charged forward once again. "Good luck with that." John was sitting with the large halberd resting on his shoulder, watching Serana fight, or just blindly wave her arms and body around. She's a mess. Even Nefertiti was ashamed for her. A bookworm for her entire life. A powerful entity with powers she never harnessed before. "What do you think about her level of power?" John asked. "Definitely more powerful than Alina, but still weaker than you, human." "Indeed, but Alina would defeat her in 5 seconds, maybe less. She's all over the place." "I can hear you." In a fit of rage, Serana carried a boulder and threw it at the opponent she was facing. It evaded around quite easily and even struck the boulder with a bolt of lightning, shattering it to pieces. Serana took the chance and used the dust of the broken boulder as coverage to rush towards her enemy and destroy him with her claws, but she missed. She's learning little by little, though. Both John and Nefertiti were lazing around where they were as they watched Serana fight a dragon priest. This was the dragon priest buried above the mountain of Sheerpoint Croesus. "Curse you!" She unleashed her rage and was about to turn into a vampire lord, but John used pride immediately and disturbed her transformation. "No beast mode. These are the rules," he said. "To oblivion with your rules." She cursed at him angrily, but Croesus hit her face with a fireball, causing her to fly backward again. "Eyes on the prize, cute little fangs," John said, and returned back to patting Nefertiti. Serana was in a tough spot since she was kidnapped for the second time by John. For the first time, she was helping him get away from her father in order to halt the prophecy, but this time, John took her by force and trickery and forced her to separate from gluttony. Serana didn't fully understand what gluttony is, but she knew that it possessed power, and if she combined this power with hers as a daughter of Cold Harbor, she would be more powerful than her father and maybe force him to stop. That was her simple estimation, but she knew deep down that she can't confront her father alone. She is way too inexperienced. A mere bookworm princess won't ever be a match for the man who led armies and won wars while becoming so hungry for power to the point where he sacrificed his daughter and wife to a Daedric prince. Such unfairness was a thing she was willing to face in the stupidest of ways, but now that she is in the hands of John, her plans have derailed massively. The madman even put her in a fight against a dragon priest, the pinnacle of undeath in the ancient Nordic magic. She wouldn't normally be able to fight something like that on her own, even with her speed and power. She is just way too inexperienced. But there is where John comes in. He sees potential. He starts cultivating it. In an hour, Croesus was no longer able to face her as she got accustomed to his attacks and defeated him by the skin of her teeth. "Good job," John applauded while not moving from his place. Serana was so pissed at him that she didn't even bother looking at his face. Still, looking at the foe he defeated, she realized that she had wronged that man so much by underestimating what he was truly capable of. As she started fighting the dragon priest, John started fighting the dragon of Sheerpoint all by himself. No gluttony, no greed, no pride, no wrath, no lust. He simply grabbed his dragon-slaying halberd and went against the dragon with attacks, spells, and shouts until the dragon lied deadway before she finished the fight with Dragon Priest. All that time, John was sitting on the dragon skull and just watching her get beaten and humiliated. For a mortal, how did you acquire all that power on your own? She finally asked the question and scratched her brain. This human, his power, his strength, a Dragonborn, a man of many mysteries, a monster among his kind. What is he? What does he want with her? How is he so powerful? There are 2 ways to acquire power. John stood off the dragon's skull and jumped down, walking towards her. The first is to look for it. You can find it with a Daedric prince, an entity, a master. Whenever you find it, you have to pay for its price, and it is yours. You can live your regrets afterward, or in a fairy tale of how almighty you have become. John bluntly rubbed the salt on all her wounds. After all, she was offered to Molag Bal that way. The second method is to make power, to take it away by force and be its master, its owner, he said while flexing. And you mean that you are from the latter type? She looked at him, unamused. Yeah, kinda. That doesn't mean I didn't get powers from the Deidre before. But cute little fangs, there is a big difference between something you have to pay for, a debt, a loan, and between something you deserve, a reward, a prize. John said, we make do with what we get, but the most important thing is we don't get ourselves in shitty waters. And what is it you want from me? She asked. Simply, I want to get you out of the shitty water. I am sort of a charitable soul. John said, complimenting himself. That doesn't mean you are not going to do something in return, though. Sarana joined her arms together, waiting for him to say it. In exchange for curing you of a strange case of addiction, putting you in shape and seeing through your family affair. John took a step closer to Sarana and met her face to face on the same level. You're going to become the speaker to the listener of the Dark Brotherhood. Next 3 chapters / Discord URL. https://linktr. /Donovel. Chapter 574, Setting the Stages. Big thanks to our new patron at Ninite. Being in control is some sort of obsession with John. His trust only extends to those whom he has tested and would always be suspicious of anyone or anything that he didn't take an account of. But today, John's trust was about to be put to the test. He finally started pushing the buttons in order to get the scenarios over with. In the bannered Marin of Whiterun, John looked down on the patrons as they drank, scuffled and drank again between laughter, puke, and secret glances at the barmaids, or even touches for those who were devoid of shame and manners. You're holding up well? He asked the girl sitting in the dark corner. Annoyed, nauseated, and clearly out of her habitat, Sarana was just looking like a hungry wolf at every comer and goer, holding the urge to chase after them and twist their necks open, draining them from all their blood. But still, it is not the blood that will calm her down. In truth, it will make her even worse. Her bad situation right now was because she snuck behind John and attacked some man in a back alley, and if not for John saving him and wiping his memories clean, things would have gone bad for the little vampire princess. I am fine, just whatever it is, finish it and let's get out of here, she said while trying to hold her head from exploding. John sighed as he looked back in his book and continued reading slowly. Don't worry, princess. As soon as we get you back on a normal blood diet, you will return to a peak condition right away. Why so nice all of a sudden? She glared at him. I am nice. John closed his book. If I am ever treating you badly, know that I am trying to stop you from harming yourself. What about that time? Cute little fangs. John stood off his chair and got closer to her. I'm not the kind to bully people if I don't enjoy it. Well, I enjoy it in some cases, but don't worry about yourself with me. John wanted to pat her head, but she was not in the mood to be touched. Just as he pulled away, he sensed a presence he was anticipating. Footsteps were heard going up the stairs, and as Sarana would find any approaching mortal slightly irritating her instincts. This time her instincts were causing her to be on peak alertness, as if she was targeted by a very keen hunter, one that may make her feel like a prey. 3 careful knocks were heard on the door. John walked out to the door under the watchful gaze of Sarana. The moment he opened the door, a strange amount of hostility could be sensed even by the normal folks down there. Thankfully, those people were too drunk to even walk straight. With John in the center of this clash of gazes, both Ela and Sarana seemed to have taken a hostile interest in each other. Little do they know what caused it, and little do they care. Each of them was marked as a threat by the instincts of the other. Yeah, I thought this would happen, John said as he left the door open for Ela to walk in. What's that thing? Ela asked, not lifting her eyes off Sarana. Thing? Sarana only needed this word to be triggered. John jumped on the bed of the room, acting all relaxed. He made the introductions in his own way. A werewolf, a vampire, and a dragonborn walk into a bar. And that's their story so far. The 2 ladies narrowed their eyes at each other, realizing the nature of the other person. Both of them are creatures of the night, and the mere thought of them existing in one town would make all the townsfolk run a mile in panic. And now John is simply introducing them to each other. I hunted bloodsuckers before. None of them smell as twisted as she does, Ela said. And I read about your kind. Father always said there is particular filth to those who fancy shifting into dogs. Serana was irritated out of her way to the point where she came up with a comeback. John sprung up for the bed, anticipating how this will end with a grin. Do you know the difference between a wolf and a dog, little girl? Ela seemed royally pissed. Enlighten me, wolf girl. If you kick a dog, it will crawl back, licking your foot, begging for forgiveness. Ela said as her right arm suddenly transformed and held Serana from her face, lifting her against the wall. Kick a wolf, and it will rip your face off. Serana was taken by surprise, but her reaction was swift as all her claws and fangs were directed at Ela without a second of hesitation, but even with obvious bloodthirst. The situation was about to go downhill except for clap. Thank you, Pride. You can stop now. And all of a sudden, everything returned to where Ela and Serana were just standing against each other. That was between you and me. Covering the traces of a vampire princess got me so good with illusion magic that I can even trick you. The two of you, of all people. Damn! John grabbed Pride, with all the love and care in the world as it started to glow for its owner's attention. Just now, Ela asked. Illusions. I have been practicing some nifty tricks lately. Yeah, this was happening, but in your heads. Next time you two want to fight, do it outside of town, please. He said, criticizing them both. Serana rolled her eyes and returned to her corner after picking one of the books John was keeping. Ela watched Serana with a suspicious gaze until she too completely lost interest in fighting. She then turned to John with criticizing eyes. Where have you been for the last couple of days? She asked. Nowhere in particular. I was on Sheerpoint for some time, traced the dragon cult in a few locations, and nothing interesting happened. John said. And that? She pointed at Serana. That is no regular vampire. That has a name. Serana said. Her name is Serana. She has special circumstances, and I am helping her to control her serious blood-sucking condition, as well as taking care of an apocalyptic conspiracy led by one of the most powerful vampires in existence, which happens to be her father, who wants to use her as a part of his world-shattering scheme, which may threaten all life on Nirn. Holy! Ela was taken aback by the way John put things. No pressure at all. John smiled. Remember that vampire that captured me a few years ago? Wait, hold up. Before you ask them, the answer to every question you are about to ask is yes. John laid his hands out. Ela looked around, not sure how to react while lost in her thoughts. I am happy you are guessing my questions and all, but I would need more explanations, please, she said. All right, let's see. John started explaining what happened for the last 3 days with Ela sitting on the side of the bed listening, and in the end he said, and now, I want you to take care of her. What? What? The two looked at him as if he said the most unimaginable thing. You will take care of her for some time. I need you two to keep contact together. Why in oblivion would I do that? Ela asked. I just want her to have contact with someone I trust, John said as he leaned on Ela. I didn't go for Alina or Jelena for this one, you see. She narrowed her eyes, trying to figure out his motive. I smell something fishy, she said it. If you smelled it just now, then there is something wrong with your nose, John said with a natural face, obviously because we are in a tavern. He laughed as she rolled her eyes, so he grabbed her closer and intimately made her sit beside him. The situation which caused Serana to look from above the book with bewilderment, then try to shrink in the corner she's in. Seriously now, what is it you are not telling me? Ela asked. John cleared his throat and relaxed back. Have you heard about the Dawn Guard? He asked. It is a fort in Rift Inn. Aside from that, there used to be an order of the same name that is dedicated to hunting vampires. She said, yes. It is an order that rose many years ago when the son of a Jarl from Rift Inn was caught with vampirism. The methods of the Dawn Guard are effective, but what? Let's say there is something I never understood about them. John said, then changed the subject. Either way, the vampires have been moving against some small settlements lately, and they targeted many innocents. They're going to be a problem. We have taken a few jobs to eradicate vampires lately. Ela nodded in agreement. That's not even what I am warning you about. The vampires who are truly up against are more ruthless and twice as dangerous compared to any low-blood vampire you know. She is an example of what you will face then. All right, what does the Dawn Guard have to do with any of this? I have received reports that they are being reformed under a man called Isran as we speak. Aside from that, the Hall of the Vigilant will be attacked in the near future, so I would like you to warn them. That's all? It should be. I want you to be wary of the vampires and not fully support the Dawn Guard at the same time. They will gain a lot of popularity, but we need to keep them from being as ill-reputed as before. On the other hand, I will leave Serana in your care for a few days. She has been training on combat with me, so her instincts are a bit heightened. Take her to the woods and show her how to get calmer. Ela looked at Serana, then looked away. Easier said than done. John kissed her on the cheek and jumped off the bed. With that, I'm going to leave you to get along. I have a mission somewhere else. He didn't even think twice before leaving Serana with Ela, which may sound like a bad idea in every conceivable way, but John had a plan and faith in the training he made Serana go through. She is very strong-willed and will be a huge asset. And with that, he left Whiterun. During the next day, John traveled back to Winterhold, then right to Rift Inn. He didn't reveal his arrival in Winterhold, but rather headed directly to Nurina and gave her a strange gift. I remember the birthday of Archmage Savos is around the corner. He said before passing a box with a jade pendant to her. Please, tell him this is an artifact from elsewhere. The pendant he passed was a minor artifact he bought, but he ended up fortifying its effect through special means. What is it for? When Nurina asked that, John smiled and told her that she may thank him later and went away. He knew that the Archmage had a competitive nature and loved expensive things, so he would surely accept the pendant and keep it close by. After he left Winterhold, John teleported to Rift Inn and silently entered the Ragged Flagon without anyone noticing. The reason for doing so was to unnoticeably infiltrate into the Thieves' Guild den and plant something in. He made sure to leave everything as it is, but he left a certain item behind on the desk of Mercer Fry. The skeleton key is now where it is supposed to be. Next 3 chapters and Discord URLs. https://linktr/Donovel. Chapter 575, Hitting the Books. It didn't take much for everything to unfold now that John got involved. He was right. Some scenarios don't just happen without his interference, even with his friends working hard on them. In Rift Inn, Maven Blackbriar met with Jellinar at last and gave her a job. Jellinar was of course disguised as Sparrow, and she could have few words out of Maven. Surprisingly, and despite how Maven was upset with John, she didn't accuse him of sabotaging her work in Rift Inn or even getting in close contact with Honningbrew Meadery, her rival in the mead business. John Dare may be arrogant and moves around without accounting consequences, but he is by no means someone who would waste time like this. Such petty actions don't even bother me, but they rather harm your guild, little Sparrow. Seeing Maven say such words to her, and aside from the bad vibes, Jellinar was left with a few clues on what exactly is going on. She knows that John knows, but he only reveals what makes things easier for her, but not ultimately easier to the point where she can breeze through all the missions he gives her. Yet for Maven to see through John to such extent. It is true that enemies walk on narrow paths and would understand each other over time. John and Maven had an unspoken animosity as she thinks that John is the one who killed her son, but still has no proof and can only hate him in agony without having anything to do about it other than keeping Rift Inn out of his grasp. Jellinar had to travel to Whiterun afterwards and infiltrate the Honningbrew Meadery as a skeever exterminator. The plan was to go in, kill the skeevers, go into the brewing chamber, ruin the mead, and wait for a tasting agent that arrives from the Jarl's palace. Once the ruined mead is served, it will cause the reputation of the Honningbrew Meadery to plummet and for the meadery owner to be imprisoned. Maven Blackbriar would then interfere and seize the Honningbrew Meadery, eliminating her biggest competition in Skyrim. There is more to the plan, actually. Before the meadery operation, the Golden Glow estate was also part of a small company conspiracy against Maven Blackbriar. Once the Thieves' Guild cleaned up the estate, they found a document directed to the owner with orders to harass Maven and cut her supplies. The same sort of document carrying the same insignia was found at the Honningbrew Meadery, and it had information that would cause the competition against the Blackbriar Meadery to tilt in the favor of the Honningbrew Meadery. And that was hardly the end of it. After investigating further, the guild found out that the Golden Glow estate was sold to an anonymous buyer, and the Honningbrew Meadery was invested in by the Dare Dragon Company. A lot of fingers were pointed at John Dare almost immediately, but it wouldn't be possible since John himself uses the network of the Thieves Guild to conduct deals such as buying estates and conducting such large transactions. Both John Dare and Maven Blackbriar are the lifeline of the Thieves Guild, thus despite how the two hate each other, they make consideration to not harm the guild which does their dirty bidding, and thus the Thieves Guild is outside all their investment struggles. Those fingers pointing towards John didn't last long. However, as offending one of the patrons and an old member of the guild always comes with a price, it was also easy to retort to any accusation towards him regarding those matters. But that wasn't the most important happening in the Thieves Guild at the moment. For some reason, the leader of the guild, Mercer Fry, became so energetic as of late. He was always depressed and clueless for the past 3 years, but now he is back to the top of his game, which should be something good for the guild, but many felt the opposite. Mercer started hiring thugs and mercenaries in large numbers, and even made very hasty moves in the open with the blessings of Maven, of course. But to what end? Despite the obvious rash behavior Mercer has shown, no one could even hold a speck of dust against him. There was a reason why such a crafty thief is the leader of the Thieves Guild despite his lack of popularity among the thieves. He is good, insanely good at that. Or that's what the world believes. Jelliner became very aware that there is something behind Mercer's return to the limelight, especially after a big job lately, but many dismissed her worries as Mercer being old and crafty, or some nonsense she didn't buy. Leaving Jelliner and her worries aside, John was back in Winterhold in his study with his wife, after the two seemed to have done it, as they finally had a private moment together. Alina was smiling ear to ear now that she has John all for herself, and forgot to rally Johnrad's message to him. Not that it mattered at the moment. "Let's go on an adventure, all by ourselves," she suggested. "Straight out of nowhere? Where to?" "We traced a few books about the Eye of Magnus, but they were stolen. You already know that. We launched an investigation and found where they were taken. I am tasked with their retrieval. It is going to be on a mountain north to Whiterun, overlooking the White River." "I understand. So we are finally hitting the books?" "Hitting the books?" Alina asked. "No, just something I predicted. So a man and wife adventure time, is it? I wouldn't have taken it any other way." Finally, and after some long time, John and Alina visited the college all by themselves and took their badges as they submitted, going on a mission together. It is rare to see John doing some voluntary work for the college, but as a powerhouse of his own, seeing him doing this assures the people whom he takes care of, especially after the incident where he paralyzed the whole city once. Inside the college, it seemed that the Thalmor advisor in Kano was very active trying to recruit some members into his cause to take the initiative to research the Eye of Magnus and caused quite the headache for the others. He kept going on about how the Thalmor should be involved in this investigation, but it seemed that Archmage Savos put him in his place by calling him out in a meeting and telling him to quit bothering the scholars and researchers over some customs that aren't even approved by the Magic Society. With that, a rift formed between Ancano and Savos Aran, causing the latter to keep looking for excuses to try and distance the important matters away from the former. Regarding John and Alina, and after finishing up with all the preparations, they traveled on Flame Horse Atronax together like the old days without even taking a portal. The road trip was meant to be a fun activity for only the two of them, and they managed to make the most of it. The war is not that active around Winterhold thanks to Lust and what it did last time, and John himself sent a few messages full of hard languages to the two sides of the war to not be so confident and threaten the trade routes of Winterhold. For one man to cause two warring sides to take this war elsewhere. This is the kind of character John Dare can be if he fully flexes. After a couple of days of traveling in the snowy winter, John and Alina reached Felglow Keep, the place where the books were thought to be. This place was crawling with rogue mages, the sort that goes behind the laws and commits crimes in order to attain particular types of powers. Those kinds of mages are sometimes not any better than bandits and are hostile to anyone who trespasses their territories. They also recruit the poor locals with magic talents and promise them a chance to hone their powers, but it's all a hoax. As expected, those rogue mages met John and Alina with hostility the moment they were spotted. The two of them were wearing their college robes and looked too classy compared to those rogues. "Halt! Leave this place at once. Your kind is no welcome here." A Dunmare mage blocked the path for John and Alina with some of his peers of Flame Atronach backing them up. It didn't look more dangerous than a mere band of straggler thieves who learned some tricks judging by the weapons they carried alongside the spells they evoked. A real mage wouldn't rely on mundane weapons if they are adept with the arcane arts which disqualify those people from being proper magic casters to begin with. Even the Atronach they had wasn't controlled by any of them, but rather summoned through a ritual and functions as a sentry. Alina seemed to be intending to repay hostility with hostility and wipe out those rogues, but surprisingly enough, John touched her shoulder and conveyed to her that it is better to use diplomacy in such a situation. Alina looked at him, doubting the actions of her murderous husband, but ended up watching as he spoke. "Greetings. We are from the College of Winterhold, and we are here on official business with the leader of this coven," John said. The college? The name put those men in a pinch just by mentioning it. A bunch of untalented spellcasters like them doesn't even qualify to set foot in the college, let alone compete with a genuine mage in magic combat. "But I knew it," the Dunmare on the lead said, more of a reason to turn around and leave. "Our leader made it clear that the people of the college are no welcome here." John and Alina exchanged looks with her, trying to convey that they should go blasting spells and kicking ass until they get what they are here for. The thing is, John wanted to play this one in a different way. "All right, can you at least rally to your leader that we are here? I want to confirm whether she'd meet us or not so that—" Spark! One of the mages cast a minor lightning spell towards John's leg as he was speaking. It landed on the ground as it obviously missed, but the mage tried to make it look like a warning shot. "Got stones in your ears? We are not receiving any visitors," he shouted. John wasn't even triggered by the spell, nor did Alina. This sort of child play wasn't even at the level that can kill a deer. "Well, at least I tried." With a wave of his hand, a gust of wind struck the mages and forced them to stagger down before a very tiny web of scattering bolts spread all over the surroundings and knocked them all down. "You didn't kill anyone?" Alina asked in surprise. "Do I need to?" John replied. "I have something in mind for coming here, so let's not kill anyone. Why don't you wear the skirt, and I wear the armor?" Alina said with an unsatisfied tone before laughing cheekily as John stared at her. "If you want to go all out, do it with a proper opponent, else it would be called arcane bullying. And don't worry, it is just right behind those walls." John and Alina stormed the keep together with nothing that can be related to the word strategy. In fact, it was a mixture of abuse and kidnapping. The two of them didn't go with the big innovative spells and returned to the basic ones such as Firebolt and Frostbite. They were acting as if they were giving their opponents a chance, but in truth, they were just having fun bullying folks around. Whoever was taken down in the fight would be dragged to John's cube and be imprisoned there in a special cell John especially made. After cleaning the keep's underground area, a few high-level mages appeared and posed a little challenge to Alina, but she still gave the same handicap she gave to the others and still won without any difficulty whatsoever. A former student of the college was found, a high elf named Ordhorn, who seemed to be the one who assisted this group of rogue mages to steal the books Alina is after. The moment he saw Alina and John, he recognized them almost in an instant, and unlike the game, he didn't dare to even ask for help when he was tricked and caged by those rogue mages. Alina simply opened his cage and ordered him to run back to Winterhold and present himself to Faralda, who oversees the college security. The interesting thing about those rogue mages, and unlike most groups, there were good ones among them, and they managed to capture and experiment upon vampires. John was really into figuring out what they after and understanding their work. He left the vampires they capture intact and merely put them to sleep so they don't use the chance and escape. And to answer those questions about the nature of their research, There is no better than asking the lead of the circus herself. The leader of the rogue mages, the boss in the last room, the woman known as the caller. Next 3 chapters in Discord URLs. https://linktr.ee/Donovel. Chapter 576, The Caller. Sorry for the sudden break. I had a paper missing from my resume, and I had to go through a 10 days course in a different city to issue it. Tell me how to make it up to you guys. Really sorry. So you were the ones who barged into my home, killed my apprentices, and ruined my work. How nice it is from you. Give the books you stole back, and no harm will reach you. Is that so? I might as well offer you a better deal. Surrender, and I'll make it painless. Are you testing my patience, bitch? You were the one who started it, whore. God damn. John said, I love it when women fight. To explain what is happening, it was Alina facing off the caller while John was sitting on the side watching the events unfold. You and this meat shield of yours. You both will answer for the offense of disturbing my work. The caller said as she waved 2 staff at the same time, summoning up a storm Atronak with each spell. That's fast. Good control. John commented. Are you on her side now? Alina glared at him. Not at all, honey. I am just cheering for the nice play. Go on, squabble around you two while I root for you. No killing allowed, remember? The scene starts with 3 mages and all kinds of summoned creatures in a large circular room. Alina and John just barged in, and the caller, leader of Felglow Fort Mages, was facing them with all her wrath. The caller was, of course, a character that appeared in the game, but it was always shrouded in mystery since the developers probably cut her from other content or were too lazy to establish a backstory for her. She is a high elf, a very strong mage, and an excellent conjurer, just like Nurina. John wasn't sure where, but he could sense a lot of shortcomings from her casts. It is as if she was having some difficulties maintaining magic. It was actually strange since that woman was actually a fearsome boss from the game. The interesting one in the fight, on the other hand, was Alina. The caller started teleporting a few times. Alina started trapping all the walls and floors around to fully shut the space, preventing the caller from teleporting and even calling creatures from oblivion. Such a method was extremely hard, yet she has done it with her left hand, which needs a lot of concentration to keep so many runes up. On the other way, she simply spammed blizzard blades at the caller like it was nothing. Alina's capacity of magic and ability to control were not just superior, but profound and just natural. A divine gift, if one should put it. The caller could no longer handle the pressure of Alina out of spite. She launched a spell towards John, trying to distract Alina. Nice. John applauded and brushed away the coming lightning attack with the back of his hand, causing it to repulse at the nearby alchemy station. Who on earth are you people? Seeing John pull such an absurd trick, the caller felt outmatched on the scales of heaven and Nirn against such ability. She couldn't help but gather a bunch of Atronachs around her to make them meat shields for any elemental attack. Yet to her question, John took the lead in front of Alina and displayed a hint of his overbearing presence. We told you we are from the college, and we are here for some books, he said, and took a step forward against the caller, who unintentionally stepped backward. You came into my home and killed everything that walks. How else do you expect me to react? She shouted. Both you and I know very well you don't care for the lives of those minions of yours, caller. John replied. You still don't kill a dog without the consent of its master, she said. In a momentous reaction, John pointed at her with acknowledgement. That's true. Dogs as they are, they shouldn't be killed that easy. The only difference is that they are humans and most of them are aspiring to learn the arcane arts. Their luck was so stinky as they fell into your hands, but who am I to argue? John smiled and made his offer. The lives of your dear, precious dogs for the books you stole? Sounds like a deal now? I didn't SD. What is that, Alina? Is that the sound of the bone grinding machine we stole from Marin's Dagon? I wonder what to do with it. John turned to Alina, who by her part shrugged her shoulders. You can have the damn books, the caller said. The books were sealed on 3 stands around the room, and with a snap of her fingers, the seals were released. Much obliged. You can have your puppies back. John said and snapped his fingers in response. With that, the books disappeared from their stands, and in an instant, the room became filled with a number of people all of a sudden. They were all unconscious and quite in a bad shape, yet no serious injuries, however. The thing that all could notice the most was the odd shapes arching between their legs. That shouldn't have happened. John looked between the two women awkwardly. Venus. With a strong shout, a strange object rose from among the bodies, and a woman materialized while flying midair, like a flame Atronak. She saw John and smiled like a mischievous child before flying towards him and trying to appease him the same way Nefertiti does. The only difference is, John used a finger of his hand to shoot the gem on her forehead at the nearby wall. "Stop making my prisoner horny." As the image of the woman disappeared, the true form of lust, which has now become a pink-colored gem, started to float around as if being sad it got hit. "About that, this is totally my blunder. I will compensate." John turned to the caller with an honest face, only to find her eyes glued at lust. "What is that?" she asked. The caller's attention was shifted from everything right towards that thing she saw just now. Lust, or to be more specific, it is the thing John called Venus. This strange life form, a living thing which she completely could tell it is. A creature of such etherealness and mystery, a life beyond the life she knows, something she seeks, or maybe it carries the answer to everything she ever searched for. She looked at John and asked again, demanding more answers. "How is there such a thing?" "Oh, a curious one. Aren't you?" John asked. "This thing, is it actually alive? What is this state it is in?" "Etherealness," John answered with a faint smile. "Like an immortal soul? An animus that is bound to the mortal world?" she asked while still maintaining her cover behind her various Atronachs. "Why don't you come out and I tell you?" John said no, that he left her with a teaser. "We took our books and gave you back your people. It is all a fair trade now. We seek no more trouble, caller," Alina said, assisting John in pacifying. "Like I will ever believe that." She turned to John now that she recognized him as the mastermind behind this attack. "You know something, don't you? About me?" John seemed to have been found out since he was simply acting from the start. The thing with lust from a while ago was all his plan, and he wouldn't even shy of admitting it. "Me? Know things?" he asked. "Yes, that's what I do." "What do you want?" she asked. "You certainly wanted me to see such a thing for something you want from me." The caller was terrifyingly fast to catch on John's trick. Call it the wisdom of age or whatever, but this woman is hundreds of years old and is considered an elder even among the high elves. "My name is John Hill Firemane. This is my wife Alina Firemane, and I go by the name John Dare," he said. "The Dragon of Winterhold," she said, recognizing the name that John was called with by Ulfric once. "And this must be the Red Witch." "I hate that name." Alina frowned. "You didn't do anything other than confirming it even more, wife. I mean, I love red too, but your wardrobe is all right. I'll stop talking now." John turned away as she glared at him back to the caller. "As you figured it out, I came seeking something. The entrance was a little bit crude. My apologies." "Not at all," the caller said, even though she didn't let her guard down even once. "But I expect something in return and compensation. I'll pay for the damage, redecorate this bland place, and even install a swerve system down your fort if you want to," John offered. "I prefer knowledge. That's what I can offer, and that's what I seek most." "Why not? It seems we have come to an agreement. Told you we can work this out." John clapped his hands and all smiles, fake, as he always smiles to enemies. "What is it you require, John Dare?" The caller's question provided a one-way ticket to her library of boundless knowledge, all stored in her head. She is an expert in souls and incorporeal matters, and even more, her knowledge of vampires is top-notch and can be considered one of the few mages who are on the hunt for vampires to commence trials on them. Apart from that, she is also a criminal who conducted various experiments on mortals as well and knows her ways around those things. The coven of the caller wasn't that famous, as she was always covering her tracks, but John knew how this woman operates. Aside from being an open researcher with no ethics or restrictions on how she researches, she is very well known in the black market as a producer of advanced and experimental products. On top of all that, she has some sort of fascination towards vampirism, even though she is not a vampire. From what it seems, she is trying to get the advantage of vampirism away from the disadvantages and create something unique. And to make things even more interesting, this woman seems to be serving a Daedric prince as well, since her soul can't be trapped as if sworn to a Daedra of a kind. It can be either Azura or Meridia if John tried to narrow it down, since the two are known for their vicious natures when it comes to experimenting and seeking knowledge. All right, I'll go straight to the matters. John said at last as he recovered, "Gluttony, I am having trouble controlling this bad boy. That is a blood parasite, vampiric and plant-based." John started explaining the nature of gluttony to the caller as she finally agreed to drop her guard down if he gives her his word not to attack. Truthfully, John was hesitant to share information about one of the sins, but he was at a difficult spot with gluttony, of all things. The damn parasite was so uncontrollable, and John could use a fresh set of eyes to shed more light on it. The caller was fully taken aback by the absurdness of enchanting something with one's own soul and blood. A normal person should feel so weakened just by attempting to create a soul artifact like gluttony, and not only John had one of them, but two, as she noticed, lust as well. But John's questions didn't really end here, but rather, they became deeper and more challenging the more he and the caller exchanged knowledge. Even those unconscious lackeys were long since up and driven out from the inner sanctum. A leech is a being different from any other. While it can survive on its own for a limited time, it can't function properly without continuous contact with a host. It will be violent and greedy while trying to establish its own source of energy at first, but to get through such a situation, it must be slowly controlled through letting it consume. A parasite can't be rejected for it to take effect. This is troubling. John reacted with discontent. But for you to manage to mutate a parasite, link it to your soul through enchantment, and infect it with vampirism? I don't know whether you are lucky or even luckier. Just what kind of vampirism you use to transfer the infection. Oh, and what are its powers? John looked at the caller with annoyance, as he wouldn't really just say that the blood of a daughter of Cold Harbor is what cultivated such parasites, but he had to give her something according to the agreement. I will present you with details on how the mechanism of such a parasite works. John nodded. The topics John asked about afterwards were all vampire-related. Vampire weaknesses, vampire abilities, vampirism cure, and all there is to kill, trap, and interrogate vampires. At that moment, John even came up with a few business propositions. If he could capture any vampires, he would hire the caller for their interrogation and holding. Even more, the caller and her coven will present their own unethical methods as a source of knowledge to the DDC in secret. Many errors can be avoided through those guys, and they are a tale that can be cut and left out when never proved unworthy. And who is more qualified than Alina to be keeping an eye on them? With that, John established his own underground vampire research and torture facility, an idea that will prove vital in the fights yet come. Next 3 chapters and Discord URLs. https://linktr/Donovel. Chapter 577, Kill Steal. This morning, Falkreath woke up on the news of a murder. Someone under the light of day while the Jarl was touring the town, and that one was none other than the Jarl's own guard, Halvard. Almost the whole town witnessed what happened. Almost everything went in the bloodiest of ways. One moment Halvard was following the Jarl. The next he was facing an angry woman who dug her fangs into his neck and made his blood splatter covering every inch of Jarl Sedger. To the calm and quiet Falkreath, this was terror incarnate. For the kill is the Jarl's strongest arm, and the killer is a vampire. With such an incident about a vampire targeting a Jarl, every corner in Skyrim was alerted to the existence of those vampires' attacks, as it would that those beasts have finally grown bold enough to go after the better men and the blue blood. Jarl Sedger survived the attack with 3 of his men falling victims to the claws of the vampire, and while all that happened, the monster still escaped. Who would blame the Jarl for cashing out every favor he has to alert every hold in Skyrim and put a bounty on the vampire? The thing that everyone failed to notice was the fine details of the incident itself. Surely anyone who is killing the people of the Jarl is after the Jarl himself, but that logic is flawed since Helvard was the Jarl closest man in both rank and action. He would always follow Jarl Sedger like his shadow and be alert from every hostile aura targeting his lord, yet a certain woman saw this from a whole different perspective. As she walked in Falkreath carrying a basket of vegetables and dressed like a farmer, she smiled at the townsfolk who recognized her as the woman who sells fruits every Frida's at Falkreath's market. She has a farm outside the town somewhere in a nearby village, but no one really cares for a mere villager with dirty clothes. She walked on the muddy street, avoiding the coming and going horses, bowed to a thane patrolling the streets, and took the long turn around the Jarl's longhouse to avoid the security checkpoint around the area. Falkreath was locked tight. She found the alchemist shop of Falkreath in the innermost corner of town, where the buildings meet the mountain, and she put the fruit basket on the ground, then sat on the wooden sidewalk with her back against the stone wall of the shop. She looked like a simpleton from a village with her old-looking dress stained with 5 inches of mud around the hem of her dress. Fresh vegetables. This morning's pick. Fresh vegetables. As she shouted the same as any villager who sells their fruits in the local street, people started looking at her with annoyance, as she was totally out of place. Whoever wants to sell their products go to the market in the middle of town, not in this secluded, quiet place. However, the person who got annoyed the most about this noisy villager was none other than Zarya, the owner of Grave Concoction's alchemy store. Zarya was just brewing some minor healing potions for the morning and had a lot in mind lately, so the voice of a villager selling their veggies outside her door was clearly an unwelcome interference. She grabbed a mop and with heavy steps towards the outside of her shop, she went on with her hot-headed Redguard temperament. Who in the name of Baal would come to... As she raised her mop to shoo off the villager woman, Zarya's feet froze and the muscles of her body stiffened with an instinctive reaction to the stare she received. If stares can kill, then the villager's stare was one that snaps necks and slits throats. "Zari, dear, been a while." The woman spoke in a tone so clear and yet so faint only Zarya could hear. The accent changed, the attitude switched. The temperament wasn't that of a rough villager, but rather a silent hunter, a deadly trapper, a beast waiting. Zarya recognized whom she's up against and lowered the mop she raised with cold shivers running on her dark skin. "Astrid, dear, you look unwell. Is it so dark in there with all the potions and other things?" Zarya, a mere owner of an alchemy shop, or so she seems, met with Astrid, a power-hungry woman who happens to be the leader of the sanctuary of the Dark Brotherhood. Of course, the two of them have had prior knowledge of each other. It may even extend to be called history. "Come on in." Zarya felt strange meeting Astrid this way. Thus, she cleared the way for her inside the shop, but Astrid seemed rather uncaring. "To be fully honest with you, dear Zari, we are having a situation here. A situation where trust is an issue at the moment. Excuse my caution, of course. Never walk into the den of an alchemist, not knowing their intentions, they say," Astrid said with a faint smile on her mud-stained face. Zarya could see the air of caution looming around Astrid and towards none other than her. "This complicates things." "Astrid, how long have we known each other?" "You tell me, Zari. Then believe me when I tell you it has nothing to do with me." "Oh, I didn't even begin to ask anything." Astrid laughed. "You're a dear, Zari. I wouldn't suspect you would have any other means other than us to deal with poor Helvard. Still, your revenge against him may have driven you impatient." "Impatient?" Zarya dropped all mannerisms of Astrid and glared at her. "You know what this did to me and my sister. Impatient is the word that fits me best while you were stalling for more time and money." "Hold on, hold on, hold on." Astrid acted a little bit on the retreat. "I haven't done anything about it just because the man was the Jarl's dog. Believe me, killing our at piss is a thing we do for free if possible. And I upheld my end of the bargain," Zarya said, "wherever that vampire which came from. It has nothing to do with me, but to kill Helvard of all people, and while the Jarl is parading, and in the daylight of all things? This vampire surely has a style." Astrid said, Yet she stole my contract, my kill. This is something I can't just let pass by. As I said, I have nothing to do. Well, I don't even care, Astrid said as she got up. But given your history, dear Zari, you know a thing or two about vampires, undead, and all that tones. I have a vampire close friend, but I wouldn't ask her to track another fellow vampire before I know what I am dealing with, so I have come to you. You have some of those tracking scrolls and spells from the old coven that used to operate in the graveyard, don't you? Zarya kept staring at Astrid before confirming the question with a nod. All right, I hope to get some on the house, Astrid said. What track do you have? Zarya asked. A few fabrics in the forest, footprints, a faint scent, the usual stuff. I'll find you something. Do give me some poison for apples, dear. I haven't had fun with those nasty things in years. You people still use that? Don't people already suspect it to be your doing ever since the past era? Sometimes the old methods are the best ones, Astrid replied. Sometimes what is old only needs to be purged. Zarya shivered faintly and retreated to her shop. Then, after a minute, she came with 2 potion vials and a scroll. Here's the apple poison. This scroll makes the undead unwary of you. It should keep slumbering vampires unconscious, she said. And the other vial? If you have a hunting dog or a trained wolf, you can feed this concoction to it. It helps heighten their senses, but gives them an upset stomach the next day. Hunters use them all the time. You have a hunting beast, don't you? I have the best, Astrid confirmed with a smile that only she understood what it meant. That's all then. Don't find me again. It's a pleasure, dear Zari. Zarya walked back to her shop, suspiciously watching Astrid, who kept on with her disguise as she went on and sold her veggies until the guard chased her away. Outside Falkreath near a river, Astrid emerged from the lake with her upper body naked and a man behind her back. She was drying her wet blonde hair from the water. She just took a plunge in and asked for the man to help her with a towel. So, we are letting Zarya off the hook? Arnjorn asked. Husband, things won't be fun if we keep on killing whoever crosses us. Let them think of us what they want to think. We are not the Thieves' Guild, are we? We don't need to go around making ourselves the top dogs wherever we go. Astrid spoke as she got closer to her hot-headed husband. Grr, I still think it is a bad idea leaving loose ends. Who said we are leaving loose ends? Everyone wants someone dead eventually, and once the other alchemists in town are tired with Zarya, someone will pay us to twist her neck and make it look like an accident. I like this. Fine. As Arnjorn finished helping his wife bathe, she put on her armor and presented him with the items she received. Any of these would be of use? She asked. You'd have to ask Festus about the scroll, but this potion looks authentic. I smell no poison in it. He replied. Good. Astrid returned the items to her bag and complained. Every time I get into some old lady's disguise, I feel like my skin is crawling. We've aged well, wife. All this killing doesn't just twist your mind, but gives your soul a certain vigor and youth. He said, Don't start speaking like Festus for everyone's sake. The old ways this, the old ways that. She seemed rather annoyed with the mystic way of things. Don't be like that. I don't feel good about the old ways either, but the Brotherhood has roots, and with time they shall link to us. You know that, don't you? Arnjorn warned her. We are one of the last standing sanctuaries, husband. It was us who kept the others safe, not the tenants, not the old ways, and certainly not cities. We would have been purged by the last listener if things were to go south. I get you, but... No buts, it is all us now, all those who are left. I don't want to tread down that path ever again. Astrid and Arnjorn seem to have been distressed lately. Actually, the last 12 years were nothing but distress to the sanctuary of Falkreath. Being the last in Skyrim with the contact cut from the sanctuaries of Cheydinhal of Cyrodiil and Warest while being pushed out of business in Morrowind and Black Marsh by the Morag Tong. Things look grim for what is likely to be the last surviving assassins. If they were to follow the old ways of the Dark Brotherhood, it would have been the end of them all, or so Astra believed. So if they were to survive, they would need a new way. No tenants, no Night Mother, no Listener, and certainly no Black Hand. Just Astrid and her little gang of killers using the name of the Dark Brotherhood to act like hired hitmen. The sanctuary of Falkreath has strayed from the path of Sidis, the dread father, for over a decade by far. A wrong that had to be corrected for the balance to find itself back to the world. Yet, ironically, Astrid and Arnjorn sat out to find the one who stole a contract from them, as according to tradition. Those who take a kill away from the Brotherhood are indebted with one, and one they shall return. This is the only way for them to increase their numbers and keep the blood flowing. A vampire it is, or a werewolf, it never made a difference who they recruit. They have many children of the night in their ranks and always prided themselves to be a family of those with tendencies that transcend the normal takers of lives and harvesters of souls. But with the Dark Brotherhood being a shadow from its former self, another was lying in waiting and ready to rise from its ash. But for something to rise, it must reach ruin, and that's where Astrid and Arnjorn were heading. To their ruin. Next 3 chapters and Discord URLs. https://linktr/e/Donovel. Chapter 578, The Seuss. One day it was all dark, and then it was light. A faint light, calm light. Nothing as blinding as the light of this world seen when a baby is born. I remember it. I remember the minute I was born. It was bright, too bright to my liking even then, so I cried. Everything was so annoying. I didn't know fear by then, much like those subterranean beasts who were burnt by the flames they saw for the first time. Life back then, it is something I cannot remember. Strange, right? I remember the moment I was born, but I don't remember anything else from my childhood. Normally, even a vampire like me shouldn't remember such a thing as the moment of their birth, but it was strangely vivid after that time I spent in the dark because I was reborn. Believe it or not, people can get reborn. Just seal them in the ground for hundreds of years, then unseal them. They will get attached to the first face they see. Such emotions. First time I saw my parents. Second time I saw him. By the second time, I could tell what happened and understand what was going on, but he could barely tell the special bond you share with those whom you unbound. Good. He must never know. Even though he may be as strong as my father, he may be fearless and calculative, but there are things that he must never know. Yet he did it to me. He put me in a coffin and said the exact same words. Wait here. I will come for you when the time is right. And he shut me in a coffin the same way my mother did. Speechless? Yes, I was speechless. I couldn't even say no. I don't want to be kept in the dark again. I don't want to feel like this, to sleep hundreds of years in this place alone to the point where my very soul is just frozen. It may sound painless, but it is not. My brain always turns on me. My enemy is in my head. The devil whispers. He comes, he calls, he tells me names I don't want to be called with, and the devil never sleeps, and he is always within, always speaking, always telling me things Oh, by the way, almost forgot. And the coffin was opened again in front of my eyes with the light shining so bright. Here's some snacks for you, cute little fangs. Oh, and take this scroll. Use it when you get in contact with you-know-who. I'll be right next to you just outside the cave. And he closed the coffin again. What to make of this? I wonder. Did the devil say the truth, or did it lie to me? The devil never lies, you see. But he is different from what the devil says. He's there even if I don't want him to be. And I don't want him to be. I belong in the dark. I belong in the deep. But it wasn't long since the visitor came to me. This wasn't what the devil said. I wouldn't be stuck here forever. I wouldn't keep to the dark more than minutes. I wouldn't be forever sealed with the smell of caves. I am out before I even know it. There are 2 waiting for me, just like he said, a man and a woman. The moment I looked to the woman, she opened up a scroll and cast its runes on me. Strange. I surrendered to the spell, and I slept deep, peacefully. After all, he is right behind me. I expected resistance, Astrid said. So did I. The place is so convenient for a fight. Arnjorn replied, how long will she remain asleep? Long enough. She didn't seem to be putting her guard up, so we have plenty of time. Astrid said as she conveyed the surroundings of the cave with her eyes. Let's move. Arnjorn carried the coffin which Serrano was in and followed Astrid out as she halted to take a good look at the cave once again. Something's wrong? The husband asked. I don't know. You don't feel anything? She asked. Hm? Nah, nothing in particular. All right. Must have been my imagination. She walked away with her werewolf husband following her with the coffin as they descended the mountain and took the road to a different secluded location. She could have noticed you. Nefertiti spoke. Impossible. Sneak 100. John felt offended. You're being silly again, Human. She stretched her limbs before walking beside him and sitting on his lap. Hey, we're ought to be following them now. This is not nap time. His words fell on deaf, fluffy cat ears as she had to take his lap as her bed this time. He made a tired face, knowing that he must never move if it came to this. Or he can just float around while maintaining his pose. As for Serana, she began to wake up not long after. All she found was the coffin she was in, but the cave outside was clearly switched. She remembers bits and pieces of surrendering her consciousness to the effect of a spell, and according to the instructions provided, she shouldn't be resisting. Sleep well? Her first steps out of the coffin were accompanied by the said words falling on her ears. She looked around left then, right to see the silhouette of a feminine figure emerging from a shadowy spot. Just because she's a vampire who can see well in the dark, she managed to spot the features of the woman speaking. She was blonde, aged but aged well with no traces of wrinkles on her face. She is quite tall, as well meaning she is a Nord, yet her presence was faint and her steps were soundless. She exchanged eye contact with Serana for a minute before acting friendly. Quite the heavy sleeper you are. You killed a man and slept like a child. Quite cold-hearted of you, don't you think? Astrid asked while walking closer to the vampire in front of her with no hint of worry. I like it. You sound more like the quality I prefer. The conversation was one-sided so far. Serana was briefed about this situation, but her nature wasn't as easy as John thought. She had thoughts of her own. Unpredictableness, a low awareness of danger, and a high aptitude for curiosity. Who are you? Why am I here? Serana asked. Quite the usual questions, don't you think? Who are you? What do you want with me? Why am I here? Can I please go? Or you are more the begging type. Please don't hurt me and this nonsense. Astrid acted almighty and capable. I am not. My questions were very clear. Serana replied with a motionless tone. All right then, you can say I invited you here for compensation issues. You took something from me, you pay me back, and we are done. Simple. Oh, and if you are going on with this whole change of scenery thing you are witnessing, then you are welcome. Your cave looked dull, to be honest. This one has a water stream. You can bathe and hydrate if you like. Thank me if you want. The mocking tone of Astrid got under the skin of Serana, who was traveling the past few days with a sarcasm spam lord called John Dare. If she didn't train her tolerance against mockery, she would have started slashing her claws against Astrid's face by the moment. I appreciate the gesture of goodwill, but I don't hydrate on water, and... Oh, I am well aware. And please refrain from talking circles. Unless you want to fight, tell me why did you bring me here? What is this compensation you are after? Astrid didn't like the intimidating tone of Serana, but she smiled with only her eyes as the lower half of her face was hidden behind a mask. All right, she said, a man was killed in a town last week, and he was right in the middle of the street guarding his master. You were seen just walking towards him, holding him up from his neck, and twisting the damn thing like a straw doll. Everyone in Falkreath was watching you that day, and I got to say, girl, you left an impression. Serana kept silent and narrowed her eyes. John told her if she found no answer, she should just keep silent and narrow her eyes. Do I take your silence for confirmation? Astrid asked before shrugging her shoulders. No matter. The man you killed wasn't anyone dear to me, just to clear this out of the way. I am not here for vengeance or something. So you came to such lengths, kidnapping me who is a vampire, and you know it, just to tell me you want no vengeance. Serana spoke haughtily. True. All I came here for is that the man you killed was mine to kill, and you stole my kill, my contract. She said. So it is about money? On the contrary, I would even reward you for killing the scum. He was a molester, and he deserved it. It is not every day when we do some good for the world, don't we? Gotta enjoy it while we can. Astrid said. Still, what made you act recklessly in such a way to kill a man in the middle of a town under the lights of day and risk people coming after you? It seems rather odd. Serana gazed coldly at Astrid after this particular question. I don't have to explain anything to you. The answer was spot on. Those who explain themselves are usually people who are trying to hide something. Those who don't are people who don't want people to meddle into their personal business. John specifically taught Serana this little trick around words. I see. I don't mind a bit of mystery. Astrid nodded. Now, to the kill you owe me. With a gesture of her hand, Astrid pointed to the people on the other side of the cave. Serana has priorly noticed them, but seeing them all cuffed and tied, even covered with execution masks, there was not much to think about regarding minor bystanders. As you see, those are our guests for the night. I've collected them from, well, that's not really important. The here and now, that's what matters. You see, there's a contract out on one of them, and that person can't leave this room alive. But which one? Go on, see if you can figure it out. Make your choice. Make your kill. I just want to observe and admire. What is the catch? Serana asked. The catch is that I gave the order to kill, and you must obey. I don't like it. What is it? Your ordering thing. I don't get ordered. Serana has completely derailed from the main course of the game dialogue at this point. At a faraway place, John was face-palming at the long ends of his patience. Ah! Astrid laughed. Now that is a shame. But what you fail to realize is that you involved yourself in this insanity when you took Helvard's life. You made your choice. Now it's time to face the consequences of your actions. You don't leave this cave until someone dies. Astrid pointed to the entrance of the cave, which was blocked by a large boulder. That one could be you. Serana insisted on being stubborn. You can try, but I prefer to handle this the civil way. A debt must be repaid. That's all there is to it. Astrid said as she fished out a dagger from her bag. This is a virgin blade. My better half just forged it for our newest candidate. I should have given you this after the initiation, but let's break some rules. What is the cost of a single mortal soul to a vampire anyway? Serana slowly accepted the virgin blade while watching the confident look in Astrid's eyes. If she decided to fight this woman, it wouldn't be an easy fight at all. Either way, Serana finally let go of her badass emotions and turned to the target she had to kill. Who are they? Ask them yourself, Astrid said as she retreated from the scene. In front of Serana, there were 3 tied individuals. A Khajiit, an old woman, and a burly warrior, seemingly a Nord. Serana chose to start with the Khajiit. Cat, Ichem, what a tender voice we have here. Might I say, young but beyond your age. The Khajiit replied ever so calmly. Who are you? Me? Vasha, at your service, obtainer of goods, taker of lives, and defiler of daughters. Have you not heard of? Ugh, an idiot. Serana didn't even listen to the rest and rolled her eyes with annoyance. She walked to the tied old woman. Quite old, but her curses and vulgar tongue was quite the irritating thing even on the other side of this room. Woman, who in Mara's name are you, slut? I've been hearing your voice talking, scheming. Cut me down, or as Mara is my witness. If I didn't have this hood on right now, I would spit right in your face. Serana sighed, once again indicating that not different from the Khajiit. This woman is just another idiot. Last was the burly man. Nord. Ah, what? Who is it? Please spare me. I'll do anything. The man said in a shaky tone. Serana had a strange look on her face. She turned to Serana, who by her part shrugged her shoulders as well. Quite the timid guy, aren't you? Serana asked. Who would want you dead? Wait, what? The man freaked out and quivered, struggling with his cuffs and hood. I am nobody. I don't want to be killed. Please. I am. Serana wanted to say something, but thought before she continues. I am finding a pattern between the first two, but with you, you seem like a nice man. Mind I say, not a man to be put a price on his head. No, I mean, I was a mercenary. I made some enemies. Obviously, she nodded. Oh no. Oh gods. What have I done? Between 2 idiots who would make anyone into their enemies and a coward, Serana was perceptive enough to feel that the two idiots are easy to get contracted on by the Brotherhood, but it wasn't common to get every little shit in the land contracted for murder. The only one unique between the three is the last guy, and he sounded strange. I didn't quite catch your name. What was it? Serana asked. John? John Dare. They call me John Dare. Huh. Serana. What? John some distance away. Meow. Nefertiti beside John. This was quite an unforeseen situation, even by John. The reason is this guy calling himself John Dare and about to piss himself from fear. In the game, there was no such thing as John Dare, but John is positive that this guy was called Fultheim the Fearless. Quite the distance between Fultheim and John in all Tamarkalic languages. Even Serana was dropping her act amidst the confusion. So to explain it, Fultheim the Fearless from the game was quite the imposter guy, and he was posing as Fultheim, a former Blade agent who was hiding in the Nightgate Inn. The original Fultheim is clearly hunted by the Thalmor, and he seemed to be quite the hero who killed many Thalmor during the war. Of course, he is one of the starting characters in this book. Naturally, his tale should be a local Nordic urban myth, and an imposter or two should appear. With John Dare being the hottest topic in Skyrim, and the urban legend that outshines all, he did have some imposters in the past, and here's this guy posing as him. TBH, I've had this idea since the start of the novel now. A weight has been lifted at last. With the appearance of such an imposter, Serana and John took quite the time to readjust and think of something. Serana pointed the virgin blade at this so-called John Dare and said, Just don't kill me, please. Fake John. Kill him already. The woman. Kill the man, and let's get this over with, please. The Kajiat. Yeah, he's way too sus. John via telepathy. I am sorry, the vote has been cast. And with a clean slice, the dagger slit the throat of the imposter John. Well done, Astrid applauded. You are quite stubborn, but it's a trait I value. No one should just follow orders mindlessly. Is that all? Serana asked. Yes, that concludes our business, Astrid replied. As she said that, Serana turned away towards the entrance of the cave without care. The moment she reached the boulder, she pressed on it with her hand, but it didn't budge, making her narrow her eyes. Before you go, I would like to extend you an invitation to join my family, the Dark Brotherhood. Astrid's offer irradiated the skin of Serana just a little because of the word family, obviously, but she got over it. What's in it for me? Serana asked. The question made Astrid smile as she acted all cool and chill. We are a particular group of people with particular like-mindedness to murder. A remorseless guild of paid assassins and homicidal cutthroats. We kill for profit and for enjoyment, and of course, personal interest. A good reason as any to join, don't you think? Serana kept silent for a while, then nodded. Keep going. I admire your enthusiasm. Go to the pine wood of Falkreath, just between the farm and the town east of the old tower. You will find a black door under the road. It will speak to you, and you shall answer, silence, my brother. Are we clear? Serana nodded and faced the boulder. Without even touching it, the boulder was lifted and pulled away by a large creature. A werewolf. See you at home? Astrid said as Serana walked past the werewolf, thin in a dash, disappeared from sight. Astrid narrowed her eyes towards the direction Serana ran to and kept thinking before the werewolf spoke to her. Should we start cleaning? The werewolf awkwardly spoke. Astrid looked at him. What's with the blood on your mouth? She asked. A snack, Arnjorn replied. So, the old man is feeling young, I see. She laughed. Heh. He grinned with his terrifying werewolf face as well. Fine, your meals are waiting inside. Finish up and meet me at home. They walked past each other with a similar grin on their faces. Just wash up after you finish eating. Yeah. Next 3 chapters and Discord URLs. https://linktr/e/Donovel. Chapter 579, The Music of Life. It wasn't long after Arnjorn returned to the hall of the Dark Brotherhood under the road to Falkreath. It was dim at night, but the crafty old man found his way back to the hideout as if it is some second nature to him. However, He would stop every now and then to check his surroundings for any suspicious activity. The moment he arrived at the hideout, he found a small pathway going through some rocks under the road, and there was a door. A grim-looking door made of stone and metal. He barely touched the door and gave it a good push, but it didn't budge whatsoever. He retreated his hand, but the moment he did, it felt as if the door came to life. A faint light shone on the texture of the door, showing the marking of a skull carved on it with a palm emblem on its forehead, and just like that, a voice echoed into the head of the old man. "What is the music of life?" The old man groaned in disinterest as he answered. "Silence, my brother. Welcome home." He always wondered how this wall would speak to people. The uses of magic are surely endless, and this door is one mystery on its own. Some say that the black doors are artifacts bestowed upon the Dark Brotherhood from the void itself, but no one is sure of the truth anyway. It is only that those doors always exist and may appear whenever a place is deemed suitable for a Brotherhood hideout through a notification from the Night Mother to her listener. All the history and lore aside, the old man knew that there hasn't been a listener for almost 12 years, and Astrid, his wife, has been leading the family like her own band of hitmen ever since. Not that he cared anyway. The moment he walked in, however, he saw Astrid walking towards him with a frown. "Something happened?" he asked. "Nothing," she replied. The newbie vampire came almost immediately. "I must have left quite the impression." Astrid's tone was a bit unsettled, but her husband only patted her shoulder. "If you're not comfortable, go out and clear your head. I'll go introduce the others to the newbie," he said. Astrid nodded and put on her hood as she stepped out of the sanctuary. Arnjorn watched her leave and walked into the sanctuary, taking the stairs and keeping up his awareness. There are 2 vampires in the sanctuary now, and a werewolf like him should put up some airs of superiority, and speaking of the devil, he stumbled right one of the vampires on his way in. "Smelly old man." A little girl, around 12 years old, stood behind the table of the front room and cussed at him out of the blue. He growled at her, keeping stern eye contact. "Isn't this the part where you start yelling at me?" she said provocatively. "That's when there was 1 mosquito, now we have 2 of them. If I reply to every mosquito that speaks, what would that make me?" he said while walking past her. The new girl looks odd. "Babette," the little girl said. "I'm sure she is not older than you anyway," Arnjorn replied. "You sure about that?" "I don't know, she reeks like a corpse." "You can smell it too, right?" Babette asked. "All mosquitoes smell about the same to me." "Oh, I assure you, this one is something else," she said as she walked ahead of him. Even though looking like a little girl, Babette was over 300 years old, the oldest member in the entirety of the Dark Brotherhood, and someone who must have seen a lot in their days. She was attacked by vampires when she was 12 and grew up without aging a single day, only to be one of the most lethal assassins ever recruited with an endless number of kills. Now to the meat and potatoes of the day, the newcomer. Arnjorn walked out from the entrance area to the large cavern beyond and could see a large cave that was probably part of an ancient Nordic ruin that got cleared by the Dark Brotherhood. His superior senses could scan through all the rooms and hallways of the old ruin to spot every single member of the Brotherhood. The newcomer was anxiously looking around the place, feeling a bit distressed after placing her coffin somewhere deep in the crypt. Arnjorn retreated his sister only to find a certain individual in front of him, an Argonian, dark scales, sharp presence. "Brother," the Argonian spoke. "Viezra?" Arnjorn didn't reply, and with a stern face kept looking at the Argonian. "Come sit with us. We are all present at the sanctuary at the same time. Let's catch up," Viezra said. Reluctantly, Arnjorn followed him and ended up where most of the veteran members of the Brotherhood are. Babette joined them afterward, and they started discussing their latest exploits while laughing at the way they get their kills done these days. "Ha! Again! Again! Do the part where he tries to buy you some candy," Viezra said as he laughed uncontrollably. Babette smiled and retold her story. Okay. Wait, here we go. Ooh, you are such a pretty little girl. With a sweetie, like a sweetie? Oh yes, how about some chocolate? Oh yes, please, kind sir. My mama and papa left me all alone, and I'm so very hungry. I know a shortcut to the candy shop. Through this alley. Oh yeah, very good. Very good. My, it is dark down here. Oh, but you are so beautiful. Such a lovely smile. Your teeth, your teeth. No. Ag. And they all started laughing. Oh, Babette, but you are so wicked. Gabriella, the Dunmare alchemist of the sanctuary, commented. What about you, Festus? How did that last contract turn out? Nazir, the Red Guard custodian of the sanctuary, turned to the elderly man among the gathering. Oh yes, please, old man. Regale us with your tales of wizardry, Arnjorn mockingly said. Ah, the young and stupid, always mocking the experienced and brilliant. My contract went very well. I'll have you know, tried a new spell, little something I've been working on in my spare time. Came this close to turning that priest inside out. Damn messy, the elderly Imperial said. And what of your latest, Arnjorn? Something about a caveat? Merchant, was it? Gabriella asked Arnjorn. Oh, a big doggy chasing a little kitty. How adorable. Babette started cracking jokes at him. Arnjorn clearly didn't like to be laughed at, which made him grunt and growl. I'm not adorable. It was not funny, and he wasn't a merchant. He was a caveat monk, a master of the Whispering Fong style. But now he's dead, and I have a new loincloth. The conversation continued until Serana decided that she was done with exploring the place and came towards the group. Nazir finished his last joke and went up to meet her. Here you are, he said, walking towards her with the welcome attitude of a Red Guard, the newest member of our dwindling, dysfunctional little family. It is nice to have some new blood every once in a while. Nice to meet you. Serana nodded. Save the niceties for now. I have no intention of getting invested in someone who may be dead tomorrow. If you're still breathing in a few weeks, I'm sure we'll be the best of friends. Nazir replied to her with a cunning look. Serana tilted her head with an apathetic face. But I don't breathe. Does that mean we can't be friends at all? Her cold voice and deathly attitude made Nazir frown, but a man like him is a traitor of death and a broker of reaping lives. Despite the freakish attitude of Serana, he kept a level and decided to play her games. Vampires are truly fascinating, I see. No need for them to go through our petty mortal struggles. I was thinking at some point about asking Babette to turn me into one, but I think I would want to enjoy an extra few years. Nazir said, and Babette is one stern grandma sometimes. Hey, heard that. Nazir dodged the object thrown towards him by Babette. Astrid, the mistress told me if I want to earn my keep, I should see you for work. Serana cut to the chase. Oh, pretty please. We have a lot of contracts lying around all waiting. Nazir spoke dramatically. The people these days are onto each other's throats, and all they do is summon us to kill for them. We are most certainly short on staff. Well, that's simple enough, Serana said. What will happen after I prove myself? You get gold, and when I prove myself, even more. You get more gold, and respect, of course. Nazir seemed as evasive in his answers as Serana, being pushy with her questions. I don't mind. It happens that I need gold, and my only skills aside from reading are smashing heads. Serana decided to put on airs, acting all tough. Oh, we've heard. You made quite the ruckus in Skyrim, didn't you? Attacking the Jarl's best fighter in broad daylight and smashing his head on the ground like an egg. Even Arnjorn doesn't put that much spine in killing. Nazir applauded. Tell me, what made you do such a reckless thing? Serana looked at him coldly. Why would I tell you? It's my business. Well, look at that attitude of yours. I like it. Sadly, the mistress won't be pleased with you killing everyone in a fit of rage. She is putting a lot of hope on you, newcomer. And I'm just trying to ascertain your bottom lines. Fine. Serana shrugged her shoulders. I entered the town the other day looking for, sustenance. The guards must have told something about me to their Jarl, so he sent his man towards me, inviting me for dinner. When I refused, the thug took a book and told me to come and take it from the Jarl's quarters. And so you took it over his dead corpse? I love my books. Huh, that's ballsy. I like you. Gabriella also likes books, so you will surely get along. Nazir seemed pleased with Serana's chaotic, evil tendencies behavior, as this is the most favorite pawn to any assassination cult. Someone who wants to act without limitations and kill without discrimination. Not good for business in some cases, but extremely useful in the mayhem. Just next time, make sure you don't make a scene. If you want fun, I'm sure someone like you is more than capable of kidnapping and acting quite easy. Good. Any questions before I set you up? Quite a few, actually. Serana thought before saying, then continued. Mistress Astrid took me to a cave and told me to kill one of three. Did I kill the right person, this John Dare? The right person? Did you really think too hard about who to kill? Bad move. Nazir said, when the mistress tells you to kill, you kill. There is no need to overthink it. I see. Obedience. Indeed. Obedience. What about this John Dare I killed? It can't be the real John Dare, right? Ah, so you know of the infamous bastard of Winterhold. Nazir said. Who doesn't? Right? Well, once in the past, John Dare was a target, and we failed to kill him just because we assigned some newcomers. He wasn't even that famous back then, and he cost us 2 promising fledglings. Nazir said with a wry smile. 3 years ago, when he was said to have been banished by the king, a few imposters started coming out and calling themselves John Dare. Astrid simply started killing them, but none of them could be the real thing anyway. At least she vented some of the grudge. A grudge, huh? Big time. That was amusing. Serana nodded as if saying thanks. Can I take my contract now? Nazir nodded with deadly delight. Your missions, should you choose to accept it, are to eliminate an ex-miller named Inodius Papias and B-Tild, a mine boss. Finish them and report for me to take more jobs. Good hunt. The two parted from each other, and Serana walked past the other members exiting the sanctuary. Arnjorn groaned while looking in Serana's direction. You're feeling all right? Gabriella asked him. I don't like her. When Astrid arrives, tell her I'll be watching the new girl. He said and grabbed 2 great axes from the wall and fitted them to his holster before turning into a werewolf and disappearing like the wind. The other members were left a bit baffled, but Arnjorn can be a bit distrusting and tense around others, especially when he gets overprotective over Astrid. Another vampire in the house, sure, made the wolf inside him restless. Next 3 chapters and Discord URLs. https://linktr/e/Donovel. Chapter 580, Jonrad Story 1, The Blue Balls Alliance. Announcement. It was a sudden decision, but I have already rebooted my second novel, Real Life System, The Unholy Mage. Just as my lovely readers supported me here, I would also love to get your support there. There are 6 chapters so far, but since I am having a hiatus with Dragonborn Saga, Real Life will be faster as I hope. He was sitting on a chair and reading a book while his skin was being dug into by a small needle. Suddenly it snaps, and the owner of the needle curses in frustration. This is the 7th needle for both of you's sake, the bald little girl said. The tattooing is getting harder lately, he asked. Harder? It is almost impossible, master. Who told you to get so powerful that I can no longer pierce your skin with an enchanted silver needle? John rubbed her head and stood up with his back, facing a mirror. A fearsome image was displayed on his back the moment he channeled a bit of the chaos infection through it. Beth's skill was almost divine when it comes to applying tattoos. John's back, the image of a dragon and a tiger coiling in a struggle and surrounded by a frame of Nordic knots and skulls made him feel like those beasts are going to burst out of his back and devastate the world around him. You like it? John turned to the other person present in the scene and asked. Edgy. I like. Miranda said as she softly touched John's back before the patterns faded away. Unlike in the past, Miranda has taken a state of full relaxation in Winterhold and John's house. Despite being an altmare, she was rapidly acknowledged after winning a few drinking contests against some of the Nords, establishing a strong reputation for herself. Her edgy, silent attitude and terrible punk hairstyle she likes made her seem like a kind of her own, wild, moody, and extremely sexy. Beth excused herself as it was already late, and John sat in an armchair covered with fur and Miranda sat on his lap. The other girls are all busy tonight, I see, John said as he saw the room empty save for him and Miranda. I was supposed to be busy. I asked Isha to fill in for me tonight. Smart. The others will call you traitor, though. Like they weren't sneaking with you from time to time? To be fair, I can reveal any secrets between my women. If they weren't, you wouldn't have responded that way. True. No further details, though. She happily snuggled in, and he embraced her, no questions asked. Will you pat me like you pet your cat, or should we skip to the aggressive stuff? I don't pet anyone how I pet Nefertiti, for the record. That would be blasphemy on my part. Let's skip to the aggressive part, shall we? She nodded with a faint smile, showing her excitement. She was about to stand up and go bring something, but John held her by her neck immediately. We haven't been training for a while now. Guess you grew a little bit bold, John said. Miranda's face remained passive for a moment before making a facial expression of delighted cheekiness. I am so sorry, Daddy, she said, trying to get closer to him, but he held her from her ear. Only good girls get to be played with. Bad girls will be punished. I will. I was such a bad girl. She descended between his legs, sitting on her knees. This scene was exclusive only to John and Miranda. All the other girls knew about Miranda's masochistic tendencies with John, but only John knew the extent of how kinky this play can go between him and Miranda. She can simply be very demanding when dominated. She loved this kind of thing, and John loved making her feel that way. Now, why were you going to stand off my lap without permission? John said as his left hand went down through her collar and started touching her chest area and undoing her dress. I was going to bring you your leather-tight pants, Daddy, and the whip. Oh, good intentions, I see. John nodded as he made her upper half completely visible. All right, go bring it. She was about to stand, but he pushed her down with a finger and gestured for her to crawl rather than walk. It made her even more excited as she turned around to crawl on her dress, only to feel that its hem was stepped on. She turned back and smiled as the dress slid on her back, through her hips exposing her, and she crawled out of it smoothly. She arrived at the chest under the bed, pulled it out, and unlocked it for several objects of elastic nature in various shapes and forms to appear. She rummaged through them and finally pulled out a pair of sturdy leather pants, a whip, and a long, soft rope. As she crawled back, John took the leather pants and changed into it immediately, then held her from beneath her chin and made her look up. Punishment time? Yes, Daddy. Stand up. She stood up in front of him, wearing nothing and hiding nothing. He touched her wherever he wanted to touch, and from behind her, he clutched her neck the way she likes. With his other hand, he printed a red palm on her right, but cheek before the left. Am I redeemed now, Daddy? Do you wanna? And no. Good answer. It was finally the time. John took the rope she gave him and started passing it from its exact middle from behind her neck before circling over her shoulder, around her back to the front, between her hips, then a knot and a twist. He started going in different patterns, tying and knotting until she was tightly tied. While doing so, she moaned as she kept rubbing against him, causing him to be fully ready for her. Her arms and legs were free for now, at least, because the night was still starting. John took the small whip and slowly started to pass it along her skin as he pushed her on the bed and raised. Asterisk knock knock knock. Master! John and Miranda turned into a blur all at the same time, and in a couple of seconds, they were back in their clothes without a hint of anything happening in the room. Beth entered after taking permission and looked at the two. There was a gust of wind earlier. I just closed the window, Beth. What's wrong? John asked with a very calm and collected smile that would send shivers to a mountain. Grandpa Johnrad was asking for you. He is with Master Alina, Lady Julliner, and Uncle Wolf are outside. Uncle Mirren and Lady Isha are also there. Why the F? John barely held himself at the mention of Johnrad, but he took a deep breath and didn't say any bad word in front of Beth. All right, Beth. You can go to bed now, Miranda said, and watched as the girl walked out. The two sighed lengthily and looked at each other. Is this what they call blue balls? She asked. You too? John clenched his teeth and stomped the ground. I'm going to go teach that ugly guy a lesson. After storming out of his room, John walked through the tower's upper section to the roof of the middle section where a large balcony was prepared for the family. There, John could see Jonrad and every one of the Blue Balls Alliance sitting together drinking and laughing. "Oh, John's sister, you two came?" Mirren called innocently. "Uncle Jonrad is about to tell us a story. The story of how he became the ugliest man in the world overnight." John sternly said as he walked closer and picked the seat closest to Jonrad, not breaking eye contact with him. "Or the story of how he became the Lord of Awkward Moments. I wasn't planning to reveal it, but there is a secret why my son became so unsightly." Jonrad made a rapid comeback. "Yeah? Let's hear it." John slammed the table in anticipation of the verbal battle yet to come. "They're doing it?" Mirren. "Not again." Isha. "For God's sake." Wolfer. "But you two are almost..." Alina. "Don't." John and Jonrad. "Ah, this is so fun. Hey kitty, come and watch." Jelliner. The party was assembled in the weirdest of ways after a long workday for most of them and a painful experience for John and Miranda. "All right, everybody shut up." Alina clapped. "Father, please continue." "Where were we?" Jonrad failed to remember where he stopped. "You were telling us about the year 188 when you were at Wayrest. The city was attacked that year, right?" Wolfer said. "Yes, 188. Jonrad nodded. "Hold up. You guys have already ruined my night. Can you recap what happened before we arrived, please?" John asked. "No, I won't. Look at you, loser, saying please." Jonrad mockingly said. "He was waiting for you to arrive before he starts." Alina stopped the conflict from happening by telling on Jonrad. "Daughter, you are no fun." "Thanks, wifey. Hurry up." For 188, what happened? You saved the city and became some hero? Jelliner asked. "Aside from the heroic escapades, that story I want to tell is not heroics or such. It is actually the opposite. It is a tale with no heroes at all. Let's get the drinks first." John clapped, and a barrel of wine appeared on the table between the gathering. He passed the goblets, and they all drank for their own reasons. John's was to not ever have blue balls ever again. And the story took them back 13 years ago. 13 years ago, the 5th of mid-year, free 188, High Rock, the Kingdom of Wayrest. The story is narrated by Jonrad in the present time, but he will conceal some of the events that will be written here. Only John will be able to tie things together. It starts with a broken man looking at the sight of his wife and only child ride in the opposite direction as he takes lead amidst the enemy forces all alone. In a fit of madness and anger, he tosses barrels of alchemist fire in the Iliac Bay and burns 3 ships for the Almarai Dominion Navy before he escapes with arrows and sword wounds littering him. Drifting across the bay, he soon arrived at High Rock and was treated by a wiseman for a month or so until he was able to walk again. News reached him from Skyrim about the clash of the Nordic clans over a cursed child and its death somewhere near Riften. By that time, Jonrad lost all hope in life and almost drank to his own demise if not for an old friend finding him. Glimmet, a wandering hero who can be described as forgotten, but he was rather more of an untold one. He presented him with an orb. He showed him the image of his child being raised in an orphanage and his wife being nursed by her family. Jonrad never felt so grateful, but also knew he was weak and incapable of reclaiming his family again with only this amount of strength. Rather than going back to Skyrim and endangering his family, he decided to stay in High Rock, look for a master mage to teach him how to mix the flame magic with swordplay like the old Akavir have done, but all rendered him as crazy or rather, as someone invested in fictions. Give up he never did, and soon he found the teacher who was willing to teach. Rather than an actual teacher, it was a patron of force at Daedra. Bothia, Daedric prince of plots and murder. How could an ordinary man come into contact with Bothia? Simple. He summoned the Daedric prince after waltzing into an arena of her followers and slaying them to their last, leaving not even a priest standing. Bothia showed him favor. 7 tasks, 1 wish fulfilled. Power, he demanded. Power, Lord. Power thou shalt have. A murder? Easy. Who is the target? A bandit lord. Done. A corrupt knight. Easy. A serial killer. With pleasure. A scheming official. No wonder. A pirate lord. Without a doubt. 5 names were crossed. 2 names remained. Still, each soul he took changed something, altered the world somehow. A far-lasting consequence. A butterfly effect. He sensed it but didn't know it could happen this way. The effects were too strange. The bandit lord's death caused the bandits to fight amongst themselves and descend into chaos, with the majority of them taking to the sea and joining the pirates instead. It also made the security outside the town safer, thus the guards and knights became lax. The corrupt knight's death unified the knights of Wayrest under another knight's authority, someone who is not any less corrupt. It started some sort of monopoly on corruption for the new rising knight, and a lot of embezzlement happened. The serial killer's death was an all-way for justice, but with him gone, the guards became more lax on their night duty. The scheming official was no less dirty than the king's entourage, but he was from a different faction that believed in puppeteering the king or his heirs rather than letting the corruption spread. Lastly, the pirate lord was killed, and another rose in his stead. That other one was smarter, nastier, and way too evil. Each and every single one of those simple 5 kills led to the complete crippling of Wayrest, and the next thing, a fleet of pirates landed. Next 3 chapters and Discord URLs. https://linktr/Donovel. Chapter 581, Jonrad's Story. 2. Euthernir. If you leave a comment, you will help promote this novel. Little did it matter that day to Hilda what Jonrad said. She just kicked everything in her way and walked out of the tavern in a mix of anger and pain. I can't go back to Skyrim. I am not powerful enough yet. John is safer away from us. I still don't have the power to protect you both. Power is the most important thing right now. Each word he said was only about power this and power that. He was obsessed to no end with being powerful. He was in no way going to let anything stop in his way in order to gain this power he always obsessed over. You can call it whatever you want, but what you are after will cost you more than what you can handle. She said those words and left. Around Jonrad were Tyr, Kasha, Glymet, and Loneth. Kasha from Hammerfell chapter. Loneth from the college. Go after her. Jonrad asked Tyr, Hilda's brother, and the latter simply nodded before walking out. Still, the situation was cold and awkward. How did it reach this? It started with Jonrad and Glymet operating in Wayrest as mercenaries for a couple of months so far. Jonrad was after a certain magic tome from the Magic Guild of Wayrest, and Glymet was led here by chance to bump into Jonrad in a tavern some time ago. Using Glymet's mystic ability, Jonrad learned that the magic tome he is after is hidden deep in the vaults of King Berinya. A hopeless endeavor for the king was known to be selfish and manipulative. Sometime later, Glymet managed to notify his old group to come and visit Wayrest, telling them that Jonrad is with him. General Kasha of Cyrodiil and the ex-wife of Tyr agreed to visit. The same went for Tyr and Loneth, who were friends with Glymet from the Great War. Hilda came as well to see Jonrad after 7 years. It was the most awkward of meetings for Jonrad and Hilda, he who chose not to return, and she who had to give their son to an orphanage in order for them to survive. Aside from them, even the divorced Tyr and Kasha were acting like lovebirds, let alone Glymet and Loneth. The conversation happened. The total mood sunk down. Hilda shouted. Jonrad calmly replied. She kicked the door out, and he kept drinking alone. It was a dark period of their lives. 8 years have passed since they had Jonhild. 8 yet to come until they all reunite, but this is a story about Jonrad's dark times. While Hilda would spill blood and act like a pirate, venting her rage and painting the sea red, Jonrad started to burn everything in his wake. The King of Ash was a name to be feared during those times. He would pass by Thalmor envoys and patrols and strike them with his wrath, leaving nothing but standing husks. The moment they are touched is the moment they crumble and disintegrate like ash. The other day, Glymet saw off Tyr, Kasha, Loneth, and Hilda while Jonrad chose to disappear somewhere only to end up discovered by Glymet watching Hilda as she boarded her ship. You should go fix things while you still can, Glymet said. I know, Jonrad replied. But you won't? I mustn't. I am not ready. Glymet nodded. That stinking luck of ours. Luck isn't supposed to be stinking. No. We are both serpent stars, so I guess we aren't the one to speak about luck anyway. Glymet and Jonrad may seem different in many things, but they saw eye to eye. Just like Jonhild and Jonrad, Glymet too was born under the same birth sign, the serpent, a constellation that brings no peace. Jonrad knew that if he goes back to his son, trouble will follow them wherever they go. Those murderous clans will know that Jonhild is alive, gang up once again and try to do something. The Thalmor won't sit still either with the Skyrim's most wanted family emerging again. The only way out of this was the way it began, conflict, and that needs a lot of power to be won. Let's get out of here. Jonrad turned away with each step he took causing him an ever so painful agony. He would drink himself to death for the whole night until tomorrow after that. The next day was a day that dragged both Jonrad and Glymet into a confrontation with fate in the image of an old Breton man from the upper nobility of High Rock. His name is Uthernir. He invited Glymet and Jonrad, but Jonrad bailed out, as he was still not okay from the whole drinking thing. As Glymet approached Uthernir in his manor, the two of them sat and started conversing about a job that can only be called a suicide mission. Come in, traveler. I'm so glad you got my invitation. Uther spoke. Thank you, Lord Uther, Glymet said as he surveyed the place with his eyes left and right, sensing the presence of many others hiding behind the corners. Excuse my guards. Lately, things haven't been looking up to my business as well as my safety. Too many concerns, I may say. Uther explained. No need, my lord. I hope you find peace of mind in both business and privacy. Glymet said with a tone that carried a bit of mockery. Please help yourself. Uther invited Glymet to a plate of grapes and a goblet of wine, which the latter didn't refuse. The two men were sitting near a fireplace in two large chairs against each other. Glymet could see signs of worry and concern all over Uther's face and started making preparations on how to press the rich old man for more money. I've been watching you for some time, and I think you're just the person I need. Uther started speaking. Oh. Glymet felt awkward about it as he blew the seeds of the grapes into his fist and dumped them on the table. I don't appreciate it when my privacy is being violated. Excuse my caution, young man, but a man of my position should be very wary of those whom he deals with, and this is a job for the best mercenary I can find. Uther replied. I understand, but just to be clear from now on, I don't like being supervised and bossed around. Glymet made a serious face as he pointed. You have my word of honor. Uther nodded, then remembered something. I thought you would be working with a partner. Tall, Nord. Ah, my partner is having a long break, sadly. He had some depressing words from Skyrim. Skyrim, yes. You're from Skyrim as well, right? Uther asked, trying to point out the resemblance of Glymet's name and those of Nord's. Me? I was born here in High Rock, in Dragonstar. You know the folk there, Bretons mixed with Red Guards and Nords and even Imperial. We pride ourselves to be the most diversified human community. Oh, true. The folk of Dragonstar are unique indeed. No one can tell what race you are without tracing your heritage. Indeed, it was nice getting introduced, Uther said as he drank. I am Uthernir of the Nir Trading Company, the largest network of traders in the Eastern Kingdoms and a major partner to the crowns of Hammerfell. Ah, so you did some digging. Uther laughed, as he didn't expect less from Glymet, who was smiling as well. The two men seemed to have high standards and taking careful steps in their deals which will fit this job royally. Let's get down to business, shall we? Uther said. Let's hear it. I warn you, this task will be bloody, but the cause is just. It concerns an infamous band of assassins known as the Dark Brotherhood. The Brotherhood is a foul death cult worshipping a living corpse known as the Night Mother. Some years ago, my daughter, the poor misguided girl, murdered her own mother in order to gain their favor. She claimed to be recruited by the Night Mother's listener herself. Later, I learned that my daughter too had died pursuing this violent life. For years I have sought this listener, but she is elusive. I want you to infiltrate the Brotherhood, find her, and lead me to her. Together, we will ensure that no other family suffers the same fate as mine. If you leave a comment, you will help promote this novel. The last words Near said was on how to get into contact with the Brotherhood. I know one sure way to get the Brotherhood's attention. Find someone they were planning to assassinate and kill them first. I would check the inn to see if anyone's seen anything suspicious. I also know a man was murdered yesterday. Try examining his body. Glymet took those words and the other ones to his friend, Jonrad. The latter heard them while drinking and barely put his mind into them. You're in or what? Glymet asked. I don't care about a damn bloody Brotherhood. Jonrad replied with the stinky breath of a drunken man. Let's just go track down the damn listener the old-fashioned way. Come on, man. You and I know very well how good of a deal this is. Stable funding for months, maybe a year or two. You get to dabble into something other than and less dangerous than these labors of Bothia you are doing. Who knows? The gods may smile upon your sorry ass for getting the world of an evil cult. Yeah, the gods. Jonrad mocked Glymet as he was about to drink from his tankard again, but Glymet pulled it away. Sorry, mate. I need you sober and... Fuck off. This horse piss can't get me halfway to Mara's lap, let alone to Bella's bosom. Jonrad scoffed at Glymet's worries as he started drinking from the bottle. Your funeral, my friend. Glymet stood up. Fine. How about we split up on this? I'll ask around here in the inn about suspicious activities, and you go put your spy skills to good use on that murder scene. I'll finish this and go. Also do something about the smell, lighten, or get laid, or whatever. You look like a damn mess. And did you take his advice? John, more or less. Jonrad, there is no more or less about getting laid. John, well, things escalated one way or the other later that night. Jonrad, fuck you. John, why? Why? Jonrad, just saying. John. John tried to console his sex partner of earlier this night, Miranda, by parting her back only to feel a weird texture under her clothing. You haven't taken out the ropes? John whispering. And you haven't changed your leather pants. Miranda whispering. The two realized that they put on their clothes in hurry and are now trapped with their kinky uniforms barely hidden. The only thing they could do was to act natural. Glymet approached the bartender readying a pair of gold septims in his palm before passing them on to the indifferent innkeep. Good evening. What do you want? Lining up the tankards after cleaning them, the innkeeper took the money from Glymet. I'm looking for some rumors for work. Haven't you seen any suspicious folk lately? The silly question made the innkeeper look at Glymet up and down while Jonrad shook his head to the pitiful attempt of fishing out information. The last suspicious folk I've been seeing lately are a few wood elves who haggle as much as Kajiat and a couple of mercenaries lazing around in my inn, the innkeeper said in patience. You have to be more specific with suspicious, kid. Glymet scratched his head, realizing how silly it went, so he decided to be even sillier. If it is more specific, have you heard of anyone who mentions things like murder, killing, or maybe cities? The question completely erased the grin off the innkeeper's face, just as Glymet hoped it would. Still, it was rather replaced with some grim expression. Piss off. The innkeeper tossed back the coins at Glymet. You and your friend need to get the fuck out. What? Come on, we're customers here. At least give me a lead. You asked too many questions. The innkeeper slammed his counter table. I think it's time we taught you what we do to nosy people. With that, a few buffed-up thugs came from all the corners standing around Glymet. The situation looked threatening and escalating to a flying bottle. And what? Alina. Not my proudest moment, believe me. Jonrad. The bottle landed crashing onto the head of one of the goons, and the one who threw it was the awkwardly stumbling Jonrad. Tavern War. For Skyrim. Woo. Jonrad. HAAA. Everything else. If you leave a comment, you will help promote this novel. Next 3 chapters and Discord URLs. https://linktr/e/Donovel. Chapter 582. Jonrad's Story 3. The Lady of Wayrest. If you leave a comment or vote, you will motivate the author help promote this novel. The two of them stumbled out of the inn with bruises around their eyes. Jonrad was especially smiling while Glymet wanted to just strangle him. What happened to not to cause a scene, rules? Glymet wanted to rant, but Jonrad patted him strongly. Relax, my friend, relax. At least I am sober now. Creak. Fall. The two looked behind them as a part of the tavern's gate had completely fallen off its hinges. Look at that. This guy you sent flying caused this. Jonrad said, the most important thing is that you had fun. Fun my ass. Glymet was lamenting the fact that he can't do half as good as a drunken man like Jonrad when it comes to gathering information. It is simply detestable how people open up to this giant rather than a normal guy like him, whether by intimidation or persuasion. You go do your thing while investigating that murder scene. Just don't mess it up. Glymet said as he put on his hood and walked away. Earlier in the tavern, Jonrad and Glymet held the innkeeper up from his nape and made him spill out what he knows. From what they managed to gather, a regular of this tavern is an avid devotee of Sidhis, the Dreadfather. Considering how scarce the worshipping of Sidhis in this part of the world, the odds could be narrowed down to a Dark Brotherhood associate 95% of the time. With that, Glymet decided it would be best if he tracked down that lead, and it led him to a house at the edge of town. He broke in quite easily and started looking around the house for a clue or a lead. Then until he found a piece of paper, a hit order from the Dark Brotherhood itself. His search was not so fruitful, as he learned nothing more than the name of the owner of this house, Castus Thorn, the assassin who seemed to have returned to the house just at this very moment. The assassin immediately unsheathed his blade at the very sign of disturbance inside his house and surveyed the place with his eyes, only to swoosh, clank. The two men attacked and counterattacked at the same time, only for Glymet to get a slighter upper hand before Castus kicked a chair towards him. A mortal fight occurred in which both men fought to the death. Glymet proved more efficient with swordsmanship and resistance to magic, as Castus launched many killing attempts one after the other, only to fall short by a migraine, growing the longer the fight continued. Why sit his stop? Castus fell to the short end and got his blade broken. He could only resort to peace for a chance to save his hide. On your knees, assassin. Glymet punched Castus into submission, pulling down his hood and revealing his face. You are making a huge mistake. Castus tried acting tough, but the blade in the hand of Glymet was steady and would claim his sorry life if he thought of doing anything funny. You fight well, assassin, Glymet said. Now, give me the contracts you have. Seeing Glymet after something so personal to him, Castus showed both unwillingness and interest in trying to decipher the situation. You know that I am an assassin. Why do you come after me? You are not afraid of the wrath of my brethren and the Dreadfather? Castus asked. As far as I am concerned, me defeating you is the will of the Dreadfather, who deems me more worthy than you are. Your contract will be my ticket to win his favor and join the ranks of the Dark Brotherhood. Glymet said with a firm attitude. Huh, almost fooled me. Castus laughed, but seeing the glare of Glymet, he narrowed his eyes. Wait, you are serious? Does my blade being held against your neck imply that I am in the mood to joke around? Glymet said. No, of course not. Castus said as he backed down and smiled cunningly. Such an opportunity just hands itself to me. I am sure a lucky one. It seemed that Castus had changed goals and suddenly fished out a paper from his sleeve. Here, the contract you so dearly desire. And the reason you were smiling like a skeever? Glymet asked, pressing his blade more. You can say that you removed a big burden off my back. This contract has been on a streak of failure, and I thought it would be the end of me. Who would have thought that Sidhis would drive someone fool enough in my way to seek my contract? Praised be the Dread Lord. Castus seemed chill about handing over his contract to Glymet, and the latter started to feel uncomfortable with it. Who is the target? Glymet asked. Castus pushed away Glymet's blade and spoke with a nasty smile. Markham Hawksmire, head of the Knights Order of the Hour. The Dragon Knights of Akatosh. Well, fuck. On Jonrad's end, things were rather taking a weird turn. The murder scene which Glymet assigned him to investigate was rather interesting. Knights of the Order of the Hour and city guards of Warest all gathered discussing the scene of the crime on the spot. Spotting Jonrad's arrival, some of the guards were aware of his identity as a troublemaker, a problem solver, a mercenary, and an excellent handyman, so he was well acquainted with the lot. The Knights of the Order of the Hour, however, felt the need to exercise their jurisdiction on the lowly guards and the threatening-looking Nord trying to chase him away from the investigation area, with some even trying to scare him away by throwing accusations around. The way Jonrad handled this Brittonic nonsense was by being even more tact than those pesky Breton knights and lead them by the nose into quitting the investigation in a fit of rage. So, with the steel bunnies gone, what do we have here? Jonrad asked his contact. Never grow up, Jonrad, the guard said with a sigh and showed Jonrad the body covered by a sheet. This man was left here for almost a day, and we just got wind of it. And why are the snowberries and metal involved? The dead man is a nobleman. Figures. Those iron pussies won't move around for us lowly folk, even if half of us drop into oblivion. Just be careful they hear you. They hate you now. All right, let me investigate, and if there is a reward, put in a good word for me. You got it, brother? Jonrad fist pumped the guard and carefully approached the corpse, trying to figure out the bits and pieces of information lying around. Normally, the people around here would hurry up and take away the corpses, then rinse the place with water and bring a priest to bless the place so that the people around don't grow superstitious of the area. This makes such a crime seem a nightmare for further investigators. Thankfully, Jonrad arrived way before such a tragedy, or maybe after, depending on what is more tragic. After he checked the corpses, he came to a weird conclusion. This was no murder scene, but rather, it was a monster attack. Some monsters which use weapons leave traces similar to humans on the corpses of the people they kill, but they most certainly don't dump them on the edge of a human town. Something felt wrong on many scales. Further analyzing the wound patterns suggests that the wounds were caused by no weapons, but rather something like pliers or rather pincers, some of which are owned by a very unfriendly bunch of Pascalpic creatures known as Draeg. These monsters are known to be living nearby Warest in a shantytown, which was part of the suburban area immediately in the shadow of Warest, and the town has been called Drayside. Perfect place to find the Draeg responsible and get their bounty. Even though this had nothing to do with the job Glymet is working on, it is still a work opportunity, and on a side note, he isn't too interested in the Dark Brotherhood that much. After a short walk, Jonrad arrived at Drayside area and started his investigation. The town has long since partially sunk in the sea and was abandoned by its populace after the uncovering of a large Draeg colony underwater, which started to disturb the surface. Jonrad wasn't really a fan of those Draeg things, as he had to switch from his weapons of choice, the swords, to any weapon that can beat their tough carapaces in order to preserve the edge of the sword. Thus a club is always an ideal choice to deal with a Draeg. Either way, what Jonrad was looking for on this steaming pile of dung of a town is one of two things: irregularities in the behavior of the Draeg creatures, or a mark of recent human activity, and lo and behold, both of them were just right in front of him, clear as day. For the creature irregularities, the creatures were actively swarming a certain spot of the sunken town. As for the human activity, he could pretty damn well hear a muffled scream coming from somewhere in one of the last standing houses in the nearby area. Jonrad descended it as the muffled scream of a beautiful maiden in distress and gallantly. If you leave a comment or vote, you will motivate the author, help promote this novel. Gallantly, my ass? How on earth did you just decide it is a maiden in distress, and a beautiful one at that, all from a muffled scream? John. All right, you got me. Jonrad. Jonrad understood there is someone in there, but if he doesn't move carefully and without alerting the colony of those walking crabs, he may risk the lives of whoever is trapped in there. The best course of action was to avoid detection altogether and reach the person trapped in that place, which may prove to be of use. Usually, people involved in these kinds of situations are either rich or influential or both. Someone is clearly up to no good, and someone else will pay for its undoing. With this cheerful mentality, Jonrad chose to throw a small log across the shanty town with all his strength, causing a ruckus that drew the monsters away, leaving him a very comfortable opportunity to go in and enter the house. Remember all those things said before about whoever trapped in there may be rich or influential. Scratch them. The word beautiful is now making a very alarming appearance in this scene. For the sake of description, Jonrad entered the house, and its wood was rotten and falling apart with each step he took. In the center of the house was a woman tripped in her long silk blue gown, trying to break free from her bindings and gagged. The beautiful woman in a weird situation looked at Jonrad and was intimidated by his large build and rigid appearance. Handsome as he is... Objection! John! He still looked like a mercenary who was just sneaking through a swampy town after getting out of a drunken tavern fight. Jonrad signaled the lady to be quiet and fixed her awkward posture to sit her up before slowly taking the gap off her mouth. "Why you're not with them?" she asked quietly with a sign of fragile courage. Jonrad shook his head, denying that he doesn't belong to whatever group that seemingly kidnapped her. At this moment, the lady's courage finally crumbled as she started sobbing very faintly in a sensible attitude towards the existence of monsters lurking outside. "Then, thank you. I promise you a satisfactory reward if you take me back to Warest," she said while maintaining her etiquette despite all the tears. "Ladies are something else after all." "All right," Jonrad nodded. "I can handle the monsters outside, but please, we need to have a conversation before entering Warest." "All right. Please hurry, I can't stay here a minute longer." Jonrad was done undoing her bindings and told her to keep it low and do everything he says. What followed was Jonrad flexing all his martial and tactical prowess all over the Drea colony. Those creatures are known to be fierce and merciless, but with traps, arrows, ambushes, and perfectly timed rune spells, Jonrad may have obliterated half of the colony by himself that day. In his mind, however, he was milking his client for a much bigger reward. It goes without saying that the beautiful and youthful lady he saved was more than just impressed at that point. A grave Jonrad may have dug by his own hands, but a luxurious one nonetheless. He had plans for money, and she had plans for something much different altogether. "But you said that night would end with you getting laid," John said with confusion. Jonrad laughed in self-mockery before looking at his son with a know-it-all face. "Of all the people, son, you should know that this night was just getting started." Support the author by commenting, considering patronage, or joining Discord. https://linktr.e/Donovel. Chapter 583, Jonrad's Story 4. Guess who's back? Back again. It wasn't until an hour after the escape when Jonrad and the lady he rescued arrived at an isolated street deep in Warest slums. Noble and respectful as she may seem, the lady had an exceptional knowledge of Warest's dark side, and even some of the passers-by covertly recognized her, making Jonrad feel that he is walking into some sort of a plot. "I thank you a lot, noble sir. I promise you that for saving my life, you will be compensated handsomely." She spoke as she reached the edge of a courtyard isolated by higher buildings. Jonrad wanted to reply, but he could notice several auras hiding all over the place. No one ordinary either. These auras were ones of the best one can ever encounter in this part of the world, and in other words, knights. "I see." Jonrad nodded. "Did I get myself involved in some sort of gang war or street violence or something of the sort?" Jonrad's question masked his understanding, making it seem as if he noticed the people nearby, but not that well. It caused the lady to show a hint of surprise. "I apologize dearly, good sir," the lady said as she signaled for those who were hiding to drop their attitude. "My absence has its effects on certain circles in this city. Saving me was one thing, but keeping me alive is another. If you can be persuaded to work for me, with me, I can make it worth your while." The lady gave Jonrad an employment offer, but before he even replies, all the people hiding in the background started rushing out. "My lady, you can't. He's an outsider. He can be a spy. Please think this matter through." The reaction from those men was exactly what Jonrad expected: loyalty and servitude, befitting qualities of knights. On the other hand, the lady looked at them with a stern gaze. "I'm sure none of you knew where I was earlier. Am I right?" She spoke in anger. "Have any of you realized that I was taken captive a few hours ago?" The knights went pale from the thought. They indeed didn't spot her usual escort, but they didn't think that their peers would miserably fail at their job to the point where a random mercenary drops by their lady and saves her on his way. The idea itself was suffocating their brains. More to it, you wouldn't even have the ability to get me out of that hellhole, she said and turned to John Rad. "I may be clueless with some mundanes, but I know an elite fighter when I see one. I hope your services aren't out of my reach." John Rad shrugged his shoulders. "Honestly, I'm on a job with my partner, and it led me to you by following a wrong lead. I'm not sure, though. What's in it for me?" John Rad asked. "Each man has a goal, a dream of some sort. Whatever it is, don't shy out. Gold I can offer, information, knowledge, power." "Knowledge!" John Rad quickly took his pick without even thinking. "That can be arranged," she said. "Will the royal library suffice your requirements?" "My lady, wait." The lady spoke, and the knights around her almost wanted to jump and gag her right on the spot. The royal library of Warest? Even John Rad had to reaffirm what she heard. "Pretty much so. That's the best I can offer if you." "Deal." The lady was taken aback, but seeing John Rad this cooperative, she didn't even argue about his motive. Each of them has something the other desires, and in times like these, the knowledge of the royal library is but a cheap price. This was how the exiled knight John Rad met the capable ruler of Warest, Princess Roselle Berinia. Later that evening, Princess Roselle informed John Rad about the details of her problems and how she ended up a captive in a place overrun by monsters. "So you were saying that two noblemen ambushed your escort and took you as a captive in the Drayside while one of them was killed by a Drayug and the other used his corpse to mask the assault?" he asked. "That's pretty much all to it," she confirmed. "And now your father, the king, was going to be blackmailed by the traitors, and you want to bring them to justice?" he asked again. "That's what I said," she confirmed one more time. "Then why are you so dressed up and going to a party all of a sudden?" John Rad looked at the obviously extravagant dress the princess is wearing. "A gala, not just a party. It is customary to dress up as if the world depends on how you dress and make them haters grind their teeth," the princess replied. "That's exactly what he would say." John and Alina pointing at each other. "Oh, honey, darling." John and Alina again. "Moving on," John Rad. And it all happened so fast. To prepare for the gala, some male and female knights dressed in as guests, as it seemed they have liberated some invitations for themselves, and as the ace in the hold, John Rad agreed to be infiltrating with the arrest team. This was a simple job and one he's used to. Infiltrate, search, disable, and capture. As long as it gives him access to the royal library, John Rad didn't mind bailing out on Glymet and Euthernir's job. Speaking of which, Glymet took the assassination contract on Markham Hawksmire, head of the Knights Order of the Hour in Warest. In such a critical job, Glymet would require the assistance of John Rad, who seems to not have returned from his own part of the investigation. He had to do something without John Rad this time to at least pin down the location of Head Knight Markham, so he headed to gather intel on him. The Order of the Hour is a religious knighthood order that falls under the authority of the Temple of Akatosh and acts as the enforcers of the will of Akatosh and the protectors of his grounds. The priests were normally cooperative and can be considered a good source of information, thus if Glymet acted as a messenger, he'd be guided right to his target. The problem was, "Good day, brother in Akatosh. I bid you welcome, brother. How can I help you?" "I have a delivery for one of the knights, his hands only. Let's see, his name is Markham, I guess. Markham Hawksmire." "To arms." Without any pleasantries, the priests turned hostile and started all their eyes turned red at the mention of this name. "It seems that guy really pissed you off." Glymet backed away instantly. "Brother Markham warned us that someone might come for him. Submit to the will of Akatosh." The priest shouted in anger, raising his staff towards Glymet. "All right, I'm sorry then." Glymet threw a small flask on the ground and covered himself with his cloak. He then put his cloak around his face and... smoke. A sudden burst of gray smoke filled the temple all of a damn sudden, and the priest started coughing and sneezing. By the time it cleared, Glymet was already 2 blocks away. After arriving at a safe place, he realized that the assassin that willfully handed him the contract seemed to have failed a few times to the point his presence was already known. Too much for the element of surprise. Back to Jonrad. Infiltrating the gala proved to be easier, as it seemed that the host was celebrating something rather big. Many nobles were gathered and many servants and escorts, creating endless opportunities for distractions. Princess Roselle herself was acting very naturally, as if she was used to this sort of party. She was disguised as a noblewoman, of course, and one of her knights was acting as her escort. Meanwhile, Jonrad slipped under the radar with the male prostitutes. "Please, elaborate on what you were wearing." "John, tight leather pants." "Jonrad." John joins his robe nervously. The inside was a well-guarded manor with plenty of important and powerful figures alike. Jonrad wasn't the type to get distracted easily, but those bored rich nobles of High Rock had their desires fulfilled in some illustrious, if not sickly, illustrious ways. Easily and nimbly, Jonrad strayed from the patch of people he arrived with and took cover in some trees, then started counting the guards and understanding their equipment and training. He made quick mental notes of all of that and moved on inside the mansion to get into contact with some of the princess's people. "How do I look?" Strange enough, a woman approached him first and checked her looks in front of him. "Oh, it is nice. Now if you excuse me, wait." Jonrad was about to bypass her, but he suddenly had to halt and look again. "Print of him?" She looked at him with weird eyes. "Yes, that's me. You don't recognize me?" Princess Roselle replied. "I am sorry. I mean, we're your escorts. And this is no place for escorts. The only reason you are here as a prostitute is to support me from inside," she said with blaming eyes behind her mask, as if she was amazed he missed that part of the plan. Truth be told, Jonrad only didn't imagine it would be a full-on sex masquerade, which made him lag to follow up. "Then, why are you having wardrobe malfunctions all over the place?" he asked, looking at the princess's dress. It was very chaste when she appeared with it, and now it is missing its sleeves. Its cleavage is open way under her chest. The skirt seemed to have turned from the full one to slim dress style, open from above her hip to show her right leg fully, and many other places were also exposed. This dress is made for those kinds of parties. The gala outside is just a cover. This is the true fun spot. She explained, "I thought you were aware of such things. Even your leather pants open from 2 different spots." Holy shit! Jonrad didn't mind his upper part exposed, but from the spot she pointed at, he suddenly became so uncomfortable. "Either way, how is your part of things?" she asked. "I spotted a total of 79 guards and knights with decent training. They are armed with sabers and blend in quite naturally. I managed to recognize a few mercenaries and mages in the lot, but I don't like how they are organized," Jonrad said. "How so?" Roselle asked. "The way they are organized is to watch for the people in. That's their intended purpose. No. Aside from that, the main focus of a guard comes from an outside threat or any sudden movement. It is like they are acting as if they are prison guards." That doesn't make any sense. Jonrad insights on the guards' locations made Princess Roselle frown. "There's more," he said. "In the northwestern part of the premises, there is a void in the guards. Can we use it to escape?" "No, I don't think this kind of void is one you use to escape," Jonrad denied. "This is like a hole in a fort to breach it from." The situation became weirder all of a sudden. Jonrad didn't have much understanding of Weris' political scene, but the princess soon connected all the strings together. "This is the rich part of the city. The northwest only leads to the docks," she said. "What's in the docks?" he asked. "Tonight, of all nights, the Knights of the Order of the Hour are gathering at the docks." Head Knight Markham Hawksmire led his knights under the pretext of inspecting some ships for stolen artifacts sacred to Akatosh. But if there's an attachment of knights that large close to this enclosed area where most of the aristocrats gather, this place may turn into... One word remained as the two realized what's happening. A massacre. Also consider commenting and joining Discord all on this URL. https://linktr e/Donovel. Patter 0 in latest chapter 586. Chapter 584. Jonrad's Story 5. The Gangbang. Also consider commenting and joining Discord all on this URL. https://linktr e/Donovel. Patter 0 in latest chapter 587. It was a moment of worry and fear when Jonrad and Princess Roselle Barinia realized that this gala is a sweet death trap for basically all the key figures in Wayrest. Yet all of a sudden, Roselle jumped on Jonrad and started kissing him passionately, then turned around while still locked into him, putting her back against a wall and using Jonrad's large body as cover. Holy moly, sweet Kabbali! What was that? Jonrad was almost freaking out and experiencing an incredible stiffy. Shush! Keep acting. Princess Roselle signaled for him to continue. Why not? Jonrad noticed the princess focusing on something behind him and only needed him to act as a cover. He didn't mind it at all either and dug right in. This was fast. Normally with a title this cheesy, the cheese comes later in the chapter. John, what can I say? Your father is just this good. Jonrad. From the angle she was positioning herself in, Princess Roselle could spot out a certain high elf. That is Arenthal Wethrin, the host of this gala, and one of the two who kidnapped me, she said. Jonrad barely turned to get the looks of the man right and nodded. Should we eliminate him? In this crowd? It will be meaningless. We will view ourselves as criminals attacking a man in his own house, and then we will have to stop the attack on the people gathered here, which only he can call off as far as I am aware. She said in an agonized tone before covering her face with Jonrad's. Lord Arenthal Wethrin passed right behind Jonrad and seemed to have noticed the noble lady getting intimate with a male prostitute quite openly, which made him give off a burst of dirty laughter before urging the gathering to have fun. I'm confused. Should we focus on surveillance or intimacy? Jonrad asked. Princess Roselle looked at him shocked for why he was asking about such a thing, only to realize that she has been stuck against a man for too long, causing him to get rather frustrated down there. I will reward you handsomely as long as you keep this between us, she said in an attempt to keep what's left of her royal dignity with him. Oh, it is between us all right. I'm just wondering where or how we'll get resolved, that's all, he said with a cheeky face. All right, just keep the reward on your mind for now and eyes on the prize, she said. He kept looking at her. She pointed towards Lord Arenthal. Oh, that prize. Jonrad turned away. Going as far as taking a leap of faith from the throat of the world, Glymet had to venture in Wayrest all to the barracks of the Order of the Hour looking for his target, Head Knight Markham Hawksmire. Finally, he managed to track down a high trace of activities for the knights near the harbor of Wayrest, and lo and behold, Markham Hawksmire amidst his men preparing a ship to sail. Markham walked down from the ship and started bringing some of his men towards the city as he watched for prying eyes before speaking to them. This kingdom has long since forsaken the light of Akatosh. Brothers, the nobles have gathered in an estate not far from here and started raving, drinking, and fornicating while the people suffer. On top of that, the king paid no heed to our pleas, the pleas of his people, and has even turned his back against his nobles. This is no longer a functioning country, and you all know it. People die on the streets like rats. The rich get richer and the poor get poorer. What we're going to do today is a purge. Brother Arenthal, the lord of that estate over there, has gathered all the corrupt nobles he can in one place. We're going to enter the estate, kill anything that walks on two, and get out in 5 minutes. Don't let your identities be revealed. In 15 minutes, we will be taking the ship out of this city. No one will know we were even here. Glymet may have heard one of the most sinister plans he ever came across. The Temple of Akatosh is surely formed of commoners, and they grow up with strong prejudice against the rich and corrupt like most of Wayrest's high society. It is no secret that the corrupt aristocrats are struggling against the king But this rash action means that Wayrest will be crippled and no one will be able to control the mobs. Looting, stealing, and instability will be the fate of this place. Between doing his job properly and saving the city, Glymet was once again put in a choice the same as 13 years ago. A martyr it is. In an act of heroism, Glymet was about to unsheath his flaming sword and do the magic he swore not to do ages ago, but in an instant. Kaboom! The estate which the knights were aiming to attack had exploded. Not entirely, but still, a large explosion came from there, and a large portion of its outer wall was brought down. The nobles and their guards started running for it, and the knights were panicking whether or not to go after them. Meanwhile, Glymet just stared at the explosion with a tired face. Sigh. Nothing goes according to plan, ever? At that moment, Markham Hawksmire started coming up with a plan B hastily and decided to block the escape route for the nobles under the pretext of securing the city from a possible attack, while instigating the angry mobs to gather and kill the nobles. The plan almost worked as the security around him lessened, only to find a black-robed man with a golden katana standing in his way. Glymet finally trapped Markham Hawksmire. The assassins. They have found me. To arms, men. 5 minutes ago in the estate, Jonrad and Princess Roselle Berinia had been searching every nook and cranny for evidence incriminating Lord Orenthal Wethrin. We found nothing, she said. Of course we didn't. A man like that won't shit where he eats. Jonrad replied. Ugh, I can believe I kissed you, she said with a disgusted face. Aside from bad language, do you have anything useful to add? Jonrad thought for a while before coming up with a reckless plan. How cowardly are the nobles of your kingdom? He asked. You have no idea, she replied with a mocking tone. Good. We will frame Orenthal Wethrin. How? You confront him like a gallant princess with your knights. I will. Jonrad looked around. Beyond the fireworks. One feels that one is in a modern city when one visits Wayrest. But there is magic in the air that could only come from centuries of civilization. But tonight it was all about barbarism and chaos. Leave a man hungry, and he will learn how to look for food. Leave a man hungry, oppressed, and poor, and he will turn into a beast the moment he sees the opportunity. Wayrest's poor folk have been sleeping on empty bellies for months, and the prices of food were at an all-time high thanks to the heavy taxations and the ridiculous monopoly on necessary products. The middle class could always manage, but it is mostly the low class in the urban areas that keeps increasing in both numbers and suffering. Thus, when the knights started blocking the streets and the explosion went off in a rich folks' party, all the people ran towards it instead of running from it. It was at this time when looting and stealing food was an opportunity. Amidst the crowd, Jonrad and the royal knights managed to secure a safe escape for Princess Roselle away from the mayhem. This was too risky, the princess said with a pale face. Don't blame me. Your nobles are alive. The people will get all that food in the estate, and we will catch the traitor. Everybody benefits, Jonrad said as he helped the princess into her carriage. Sir Jonrad, I have one last request, the princess said. I know. I will catch Lord Orenthal. Jonrad nodded. Thank you. Take an attachment of the knight with you. By your orders. Jonrad watched the carriage leave to safety first, and the knights that stayed behind with him were his only backup. And the chase began. On the other side of town, a flaming blade scorched the air and earth as it consumed 3 of the knights of the Order of the Hour in an instant. The cloaked man was advancing non-stop towards head knight Markham and his remaining forces as the fires of mayhem started catching up all over the city. Kill the assassin, the knight shouted as an attachment of archers came to his aid while he made a run for it towards the ship. The sound of iron clashing drew ever closer, and on the pier just ahead of him, the knight was met with a nobleman descending from a carriage with his face sunken pale. Lord Orenthal? Head knight, the plan has failed. No shit? The city's already lit ablaze. It doesn't matter either way. We must leave now. The noblemen and the knights joined together with the last of their remaining men as a group of conspirators and boarded the ship, ready to leave the kingdom of Wayrest. It was almost achievable. Almost if not for the fact that the moment they stepped on the ship, they found that all their sailors and associates on board were already wiped out. Two men stood amidst the bodies, one leaning on the mast and the other on the rear deck. Each of them was eyeing the group of conspirators like wolves picking out the fattest sheep in the flock. I say this is a good day's work, John Rat. True. I'm still taking this elf alive, though. As long as I take the knight's head, all yours. And the screams of death and agony filled the air. John Rad said proudly. I thought this was going to be inspirational. Isha complained. I got inspired. Jelinar disagreed with Isha. But uncle, were you doing all that while wearing the tight leather pants? Wolfer finally asked the right questions. With pride. They came handy later that evening, I tell you. John Rad smiled. Meanwhile, John sighed for his wasted evening. Also consider commenting and joining Discord all on this URL. https://linktr. /Donovel. Patter 0 in latest chapter. 587. Chapter 585, John Rad's Story 6, The Bloody Labor. Also consider commenting and joining Discord all on this URL. https://linktr. /Donovel. Patter 0 in latest chapter. 588. Days have passed since that night in Wayrest, months even. John Rad and Glymet were still meeting every few days to discuss things, and each would go back to his business. Glymet was still on the contract of Euthernir. He succeeded in joining the Dark Brotherhood's branch in Wayrest and climbed up the ranks by gaining the trust of its members. The story which he based his reasoning on is that he wishes to find a killer that caused him a lot of pain or whatever. It works splendidly, since the Brotherhood assassins love stories of revenge. On the other hand, John Rad was in a contract with Princess Roselle Barinia. He may have been a mercenary, but he revealed to her that he is a former Blade agent, a knight commander at that. His high skills were very attractive to a person of power like the princess, and he got assigned to her details right away. At night, he was allowed into the royal library in order to research the lost magic he was looking for, and he made great progress in the field, yet not that much. Still, he kept using the pretext of researching in order to sneak away with the princess for different kinds of intimate studies. Life was almost quiet and calm almost. Peace wasn't a thing that John Rad and Glymet were ever used to, and one day the whole thing collapsed. A pirate armada was blocking the waters in front of Wayrest, and the royal galleons were sunk in an hour. Screams, fires, panic, and chaos. Wayrest descended into madness. Once the pirate landed, they started killing, looting, and kidnapping. The knights of the hour were weakened not long ago. The royal knights were few. The nobles were the first to escape, but the most shameful of all was the king of Wayrest, King Jelric Barinia. The king closed off the city walls to the refugees from the suburbs and the nearby towns. He then closed the gates of his castle in the face of civilians. One of the darkest days has cast its shadow over the ancient city. No one knew why it started, but it slowly got under John Rad's skin. He knew why. He understood the role he played too soon, and for that, he decided to do something as fast as possible. His sixth labor was just delivered to him by that old Redguard known as Hafiz, and he was grinding his teeth. He knew playing in Bothia's palm would end up badly, but all he thought of was himself. That's why he refused to return to Skyrim. Not to get his loved ones get involved in these labors, but he never imagined that he would get the whole damn kingdom of Wayrest involved. I must do something. That's all he could think of. People like John Rad were mostly relying on their ability, but against odds that they can't change. An army, for example, things would never go their way. The moment he stepped out of his residence to help defend the city and its people was the minute where he felt truly lost. Where to begin? How to deal with this? If he kept running around killing every pirate he comes across without getting overwhelmed with numbers, he may actually finish off the entire armada with his skill, but that's just wishful thinking. He calmed down and thought about what's more important to him. Princess Roselle and Glymet. Glymet is more than capable of taking care of himself. More to it, that bastard can even predict and foresee patterns of the future. He won't be in any trouble. The princess, on the other hand, is going to need all the help she can get, especially when she has a large target on her back. The princess is a sure target for the pirates, and the royal family is holed up in their castle, ordering their soldiers to shoot at anything that moves near their palace. However, Jonrad knew of a secret way that the princess revealed to him in the library. He sped towards the palace and took the road from the garden to a hidden tunnel near a fountain. There, he came across a servant he's familiar with. "Sid," Jonrad called. Master Jonrad. "I bid you welcome." The neatly dressed, highly sophisticated, middle-aged servant spoke as he bowed. "What on earth are you doing outside the palace? Oblivion is breaking loose in the city." Jonrad asked. "I am sorry, Master Jonrad. I truly am," the servant said with an apologetic tone and turned his face away. Swoosh! And in an instant, a sharp projectile broke the air at a terrifying speed towards Jonrad's head. Being the man he is, Jonrad moved like a saber cat and avoided the projectile. Then in the following second, he evaded two more projectiles and started running towards the sources of these bolts. The first was an assassin hidden in a tree holding a crossbow. The poor man didn't last one exchange before getting his head flying off its base by Jonrad's accurate swordplay. The next two assassins tried to take distance, but Jonrad closed on one of them and completely dispatched her by cutting her from the shoulder to the waist. Not even in the mood to chase off the third assassin, Jonrad cast a fireball and turned the assassin to crisp. All who remained were the servant, and naturally, a coward like him would spill out the identity of who ordered a hit on him. I don't know anything." The man waved his hands as he took a few steps away. "I am not interested in what you don't know." Jonrad crouched in front of the begging servant. "I am interested in what you know." "No, I don't," the servant tried to deny. "Shush. Quiet." Jonrad shushed him, then took out a liquor flask from his pocket. "I am going to share something with you. Something personal." He opened the flask and smelled its liquor. Colovian wine, year 134's pick. Not something cheap. Jonrad said as he handed it to the servant. "You understand me, right?" The old man shivered from how calm and collected Jonrad seemed like the city behind him burned. He knew there is no way out, and the man in front of him is not someone that should have been messed with. He took the flask and drank a big sip before handing it back to Jonrad. "Who ordered the hit?" Jonrad asked. "His Grace, King Jelric," the servant said. "Why? You are dangerous. The princess relies on you. It will cause problems." The servant calmed down gradually, saying, "So, and where is the princess?" She's at Ray Square, securing reinforcement for the defenders." "I see. So the king is working against the princess, his daughter." Roselle didn't mention any of this. Jonrad thought, "Anything else you'd like to share?" The servant shivered again, knowing that his moment arrived. "Just kill the bastard. Make it hurt," he said in a last act of courage. Slash, and the servant's head rolled down. "John, what's wrong?" Jonrad, "Nothing. Emma, just write that last part down." John, understanding that there is even a fracture between the king and the princess, Jonrad soon started to have an image of what's happening. He knew the princess quite well, and he was sure that despite how lavish and cunning she is, her heart belongs to Wayrest and its people of all classes. The king was someone who ruled by dividing his people against each other, thus breaking the strength of his nation apart in order to beat his political rivals. It is strange to imagine that the princess and the king are a father and daughter, but that's the case either way, and despite all, they cared for each other. No matter the situation, Jonrad rushed to where the princess was to offer help. Earlier this week, Glymet received a hit order from the Dark Brotherhood. As an elite member, this was one of the most difficult hits ever issued to this branch. Naturally, it was handed to him. The trust he accumulated among the assassins in this sanctuary was at an all-time high, and he managed to gain access to many details and knowledge about the other sanctuaries, but never the identity or the location of the listener. This contract in particular would allow him to rise up as high as a nail to the Black Hand, meaning he would work as a special agent to one of the 5 ruling figures of the Dark Brotherhood. Whoever his target is, it had to die tonight, yet for Corsairs to invade now of all times. The target was King Gelric Barinia, and it had to be done as fast as possible in order to escape Wayrest. Also, Jonrad has access to the palace, so that will surely come in handy. The plan deviated a little bit when Glymet arrived at the city gate and found it being assaulted by pirates. On top of it, the guards were blocking not only the raiders, but also the helpless refugees. A fight broke out, and Glymet held the gate until the citizens closed it, then went in looking for Jonrad. Knowing that his friend hangs most of the time with the princess, he headed towards the palace, and there he found Jonrad escorting the princess around. We can't let my father cower in his throne room more than that. Everything is falling apart, and all he cares about is plotting to murder my friends. What is he thinking? Roselle walked ahead of Jonrad. What you did in the plaza just now was brave enough. Freeing the political prisoner surely rallied a lot of resistance, and granting freedom to the criminal who wishes to fight is truly going to make a difference. Still, the king is the only one who can ruin our efforts. Jonrad complained. It saddens me, but father no longer fits his throne. The main reason why the people and the nobles are divided is because of him. Still, today you took an admirable step, princess. No one realized that the prison, which was packed with nobles and common folk alike, to be the solution to this mess. They're already fighting the pirates, but all they need is a defined and present leadership, and you showed them that. Thank you, Jonrad. Glymet almost puked of how intimate Jonrad and the princess were talking to each other, but as they were all on their own in the way, he decided to show himself. And who in the name of Dagon are you? The princess turned at the man who walked out of the garden trees, raising her staff at him. Jonrad, he spoke. Glymet. Jonrad nodded to him, causing the princess to aim away her staff while Jonrad explained. This is the friend I spoke about, the one that is good at infiltrating. I heard much about you, the princess said. Jonrad said you are a war hero. I hope you lend us your skill. Yes, but... Jonrad, princess, the palace was overtaken by pirates. Glymet informed them about the result of scouting the palace. No way. The princess was shocked. It makes sense now. On the other hand, Jonrad was thinking of something else entirely. Why exactly are you here, Glymet? I have been hired by someone to come here. Glymet didn't reveal that he has a hit order on the king, but said it in a way that only Jonrad would understand. It seems that we have the same goal. Jonrad nodded. The king tried to kill him earlier, and there is no reason to let him off. Also, Jonrad's sixth labor was to kill the king. If not for his relationship with the princess, he would have done it a week ago. Sadly, time has run out. I smell the blood in your words. Yet who were they trying to keep in the dark? The princess could tell that the two men were in the psyche of killing, and that meant her plans to peacefully force her father to abdicate are no longer an option. Princess, I for once am willing to negotiate with the king first. Glymet said, I know the king is not the one to choose peaceful options, but I will follow your plan. Jonrad said, I understand. The princess smiled, but she had to agree with Jonrad. Forcing the king doesn't mean killing him, and now that he's in the hands of the pirates, his position is very weak. But she knew how it was going to end. A regicide, a patricide. The reign of Queen Roselle Barinia had to start bloody. Also consider commenting and joining Discord all on this URL. https://linktr/e/Donovel. Patter 0 in latest chapter. 588. Chapter 586. Jonrad's Story. 7. Regicide. Also consider commenting and joining Discord all on this URL. https://linktr/e/Donovel. Patter 0 in latest chapter. 590. With the palace being occupied with pirates, the team of 3 had no other option but to use the tunnels beneath Wayrest to push in and sneak their way to the library. Brings back any memories? Glymet asked. Ones that are not really pleasant. Jonrad replied. What kind of memories? The princess asked as she walked between the two. The war. Glymet replied. We use tunnels like these to sneak in and out. Divines knew what kind of abominations we had to run through in places like these. Sounds cheerful, she replied before stopping. Here, this secret passage leads to the library. You'll have to go in, secure the place, and make sure no one comes in. I'll hide there while you gentlemen go further to the servant's residence. From there, you can follow the service corridors straight to the inner palace. Dispatch any enemy you see. Those are too many orders, Glymet said with a smirk. Ones you are fully capable of achieving, assassin. She replied with a hint of anger, which made Jonrad wink for his friend to hurry up and not get things complicated. As she commanded, the two super soldiers went into the library and secured it for the princess to hide. She was smart enough to dress like one of the palace servants and hide her jewels. With minor spells she knew, her hiding spot was fully prepared. Meanwhile, Jonrad and Glymet returned to the secret passages and snuck their way to the chambers behind the palace as Roselle instructed. On the way, Glymet asked, "The princess was giving you the cold shoulder, wasn't she?" he asked. "Yeah." Jonrad seemed less amused about talking to this particular friend. "She is up to what we are up to." "Well, that's another relationship not working out for you, friend. Just go back to Skyrim and live your life." Glymet poked him. "Stop sticking your nose, man," Jonrad replied. "You know what? You owe me a relationship that I'll ruin for you." "That's mean," Glymet laughed. "You know a guy like me with a name like this and a face like that shan't just find a woman and grow old. Yeah, you'll be rotting in oblivion before that happens." The two finally reached the back chamber, which was unusually quiet since the pirates will be mostly going after the maids of the palace. To make it weirder, there were no maids either. They evacuated. Nobody came from the castle's direction, so no. It was a strange thing to happen, and since the unexpected is very unwelcome in this situation, the two still stuck to the plan and remained hidden. From this place, they were to go to the king's kitchen behind the palace and find the servant corridors which lead around the inner palace. It won't be a fun story if they want to get out, but that wasn't a luxury they can account for in this situation. When they arrived at the kitchen, however, the servants seemed to have gathered in the area. It was as if this place became as busy as a beehive. "They're working?" Jonrad asked. "It seems like it. I can smell roasted meat." Glymet replied. "The city is under attack. What in oblivion is that fool king doing?" "Wait, does this mean the corridor will be available for use?" Jonrad thought for a while before spotting a few men coming their way. "Pirates?" he whispered. Aside from looking oddly relaxed in a place they should be ransacking. What was even more odd is that when they walked by the servants showed the expected reaction of showing fear, but didn't show the expected reaction of running away. The servants just greeted the pirates as if they were the masters of the place and relatively kept working. The two pirates laughed, picked some food, harassed some of the maids, and went on their way. Interrogation time. Kill one. Knock out the other. The two infiltrators rushed in with the shadows, and in a coordinated move, they snatched one and broke the other's neck before they could even know what hit them. As they relocated, they chose the method of interrogation to be muffled burning in order to not raise any noise. Of course, this would require scaring the shit out of the victim in order to get things right. And what they extracted in the first few sentences alone was enough to make the two men look shocked as they could never be. The king invited the pirates to invade Wayrest. This explained everything. Everything. Saving the princess, arresting the nobles, weakening the knights of the hour, assassinating the leader of the pirates of Iliac Bay. Every little thing Bothia asked Jonrad to do led to this moment. Now that the king's most powerful rivals were taken care of, he is going to use the pirates in order to push the rest of the opposing factions out of Wayrest, then rule the kingdom alongside the pirates who will be his men and commanders. It would be an everyday scheme for a king to use, but this time, the innocents were caught in the crossfire. People are actually dying due to this. Let's get the bastard. Yes, this wasn't something to discuss anymore, even if it was for the princess. Getting the king's head is the only thing that will bring peace to this nation. They started making a disguise on the move while they headed for the inner palace. It was safe to say that the king has no ounce of remorse towards whatever befalls his nation. If power requires him to sacrifice 1,000 souls, 1,000 souls it is. He watched his city falling to an invasion. He plotted for while the big families and large forces of Wayrest fight in the front lines and fall. Your Grace, the civilians have evacuated towards the lower city. The commander of the guards approached as he knelt down. Good. And the casualties? Minimal. As expected. They will flee when we open a path for them. The king chuckled. What about my daughter Roselle? You still can't find her? As you foresaw, Your Grace, she has pardoned the prisoners on your behalf in order for them to join the city's defense. The commander reported. Heh. The king laughed. Scum. All of them. Once the corsairs take the first line, they will all be disposed of. I can rely on your men, can't I, Aldo? The speech was directed to another man standing in the room, holding his helmet under his arm. He was a red guard with an unusually paler skin, which may expose his mixed Brittonic heritage. Yes, Your Grace. Aldo bowed. The fleet will attack the city until the main plaza where the people were trapped. Until then, we will stop our attacks and wait for Your Grace to muster the defense. All is planned. Great. The king turned around from the window, exposing the fact that he was already in his battle armor. Let's get ready, shall we? The king walked off the window and looked around. Somebody bring me my sword, he called, then looked around the room. And where in oblivion is my chamberlain? He hasn't returned yet, Your Grace. The commander replied. I just gave him one simple job to get rid of that man-whore Roselle. Is seeing, and he can't just get back in time? The king cursed. Leave some of your men behind then. Order them to arrest Roselle and lock her in her chambers until the deed is done. The king was planning for something so obvious. Once his rivals are all gone, he will head down the city with all of his men and heroically saves the day and be praised as a hero of Wayrest. It is one sure way to power and dictatorship. The pirates shall then be rewarded and their lieutenants shall secretly fill the vacant positions in Wayrest. How filthy! Yet as the king and his men walked off the throne room, the hallway outside was rather dark and empty. Usually, such a place should be filled with guards and servants whole lit with sorts of torches and candles. But it was oddly dark and frighteningly quiet except for the voice of a man who whispered from somewhere hiding behind the echo of his voice. What is that? Sorcery? Magic? The king looked to the men around him, then roared, Show yourself. The soldiers of the king ran at the front to intercept the unexpected assailant, but at that moment, a stream of arrows and flying weapons came raining towards them as if it was an army on the other side. In a second, 5 died and the one following it 7, and more after. The king, the commander, and the pirate captain all went pale in an instant. The hidden weapons aside, those arrows felt like the wrath of Azura. Archers in the dark, hide! Aldo shouted as he covered the king with his shield and pushed him back to the throne room. Retreat to the room. Fortify the door. The commander shouted. This had to be at least no less than 10 archers with very good training. Elite soldiers that no one knew about. The arrows kept coming through the door until it was locked by the soldiers, then things became quiet outside. Inside, however, was a chaotic situation of soldiers and knights sustaining casualties and injuries that didn't seem light by any means. Some were even showing symptoms of poisoning. The king's men barricaded the furniture of the throne room and readied whichever ranged weapons they had for the coming fight, only for it not to come. What came, however, was a voice the king never expected. Father, she called. Roselle. The king's eyes widened. They took you a hostage? Father. She spoke in a fearful tone behind the door. Is it true, father? You caused all this to happen? I didn't cause anything, daughter. The king replied with anger. Who are those men outside? Father, they say you're the one who hired the pirates. Is that true? She asked in a regretful tone. Don't believe them. The king shouted. Your father will come for you. I told you. I always told you those traitors are always trying to take things from us. What I did it for Wayrest. For us. This is what I always warned you from. Those men, who are they? Stop hiding like the cowards you are. Ironic. Roselle snorted with a sad face before speaking in a grim voice. Those men are with me. King Gelric. Silence was never this cold in the palace of Warest, even with the city on fire outside of it. The king just couldn't comprehend how it happened, even though he always knew his daughter would be a threat. Just not this kind of threat. Roselle, what have you done? He asked as his anger kept boiling. Who did you side with? You made sure I side with no one, King Gelric. You were wary of me, since you were the king who murdered his father and got rid of the legitimate heir. She said. Enough! The king shouted. Like father, like daughter, I assume? She said, it runs in the family. The king who demanded to see his enemy kept hiding behind his guards as he had no idea what's on the outside. Even though the princess cornered him, he still has the upper hand since there is an army of pirates that will eventually head this way. What should we do? Aldo, the pirate leader, asked the king. We make our defense until reinforcements arrive, the king said. Outside the room, it was only Jonrad, Roselle, and Glymet. The two men were the shooters from earlier, and they were expert archers. After all, the scariest thing in this world is an archer with good stealth. What should we do next? Roselle asked. He should be back now, Glymet replied. During the time Roselle was speaking, Jonrad snuck out through the window and scaled the wall outside before sealing all the windows around the throne room by melting the locks and the hinges with his flame magic. He then returned from the window and immediately headed towards the door of the throne room and cast Here Metal to melt the lock and the hinges as well. You're ready? He then asked Roselle. Do it. She nodded. Immediately, Jonrad punched a hole in the door and a few arrows started flying towards it, one of which managed to get cleanly through, but Jonrad had already removed his hand. The ones inside thought more holes would follow as the enemies outside should be ready to break in, but that also wasn't the case. Jonrad out his palm outside the hole and then mustered all the magicka within with one strong push. He cast flames and overcharged it through a door. Magic! A fire mage? The people inside completely retreated off the door before things would get ugly. Lucky for them, the spell is short-range, thus none of them was harmed. But that wasn't the purpose. Jonrad was spewing the flames everywhere around the door, and not before long, fire started spreading in the enclosed room. Fire, smoke, heat, a disastrous mix in a room full of people. While the men inside tried to put off the fire, Jonrad had enough magicka to spare on making it worse for them, and before they knew it, they were suffocating. The windows were impossible to open. Even the door they locked completely sealed. It finally started to look grim. The king stayed at the back of the room behind a big table as much as he could, but 5 minutes were all it took him to start suffocating as well. It was then when Glymet gave the signal to stop the fire. The life energies inside the throne room were already diminishing so fast that they dropped from over 30 to just 7 and in bad conditions. Jonrad immediately melted the lock and pushed the door down. The door fell with an echoing noise, and as expected, those survivors were the ones that managed to force open a window in order to breathe. Death by suffocation. Surely a terrible fate to inflict, but what's done is done. The king had the commander and the pirate leader on his side, while the remaining 4 were instantly shot by 4 arrows from the bow Jonrad wielded. With the hand that held the bow, he had prepared extra arrows that he would flip and shoot almost instantly. Alikar archery, Aldo exclaimed. A skill exclusive to the horsemen of the desert. No one would ride and shoot as fast as they do, and this was some sight to witness, yet a horror. However, to those who stand at the wrong side of those arrows. Roselle, you traitor! The king could no longer contain himself from anger and held his sword up. Jonrad and Glymet were ready to take down the remaining 3, but Roselle spoke. Why? She asked. Why would a king betray his country? To act as a hero at the end of the day. It was obvious. When a king kills his predecessor, the other nations and the nobles hardly recognize his authority or legitimacy as a ruler. By being a hero, King Gelric will gain the legitimacy he needs. But why be a hero this way? Why not work for the people and get the praises of the public? Why act as a thief and a thug? Why tarnish the name of the rulers? Why the greed? Why the evil? Is it fear from those in control? Is there no pride in one's nationality at all? That is what her question meant. Of course, there's no answer. Those who think they are right just because they desire to be so are nothing but sinners. When it is said to them, "Make no mischief on the land," they say, "Why? We only want to make peace." Of a surety, they're the ones who make mischief, but they realize it not. When they are told to believe as the others believe, they say, "Shall we believe as the fools believe?" Of a surety they are the fools, but they do know not. Kill them. She passed the judgment. Jonrad and Glymet finally had their way, and like hungry wolves, they bounced at their prey, dispatching them in minimal moves. Wait! Wait! Stop! Don't kill me! The king retreated, tripped in his clothes, and his back hit a wall. If you kill me, you will still have to deal with them. The pirates. They are too many. He spoke like a coward would, and as the blade was at his throat. I can call it off. I can stop them. He said. You can? Roselle asked. I hired them. I am the only one who knows how to pay them. He said, they won't cross me until they get paid. They know that the only way for them to get paid is me. There's no gold in Warest anymore. What? Roselle shouted. You paid them with our gold? The treasury? I only plan to confiscate what the nobles hoarded. It is 10, no, 20 times what the treasury had. Those greedy bastards had it all. A choice. On the tip of a blade, the king spilled his beans. It wasn't long after that when he discovered that all his daughter had was Jonrad and the other man clad in black armor. Two men just dispatched his elite guards and toppled his scheme on his head. What's it with corrupt rulers and pirates? John asked in frustration. Scum get together, son, Jonrad replied. But the princess took care of him, right? Alina asked. Of her own father? She wished she had the strength to do so, but we needed to exchange him for the safety of the city. The pirates wanted their reward, and so we ordered them to retreat and exchange the king for the prisoners they took. Then, after the exchange, the pirates left, but Princess Roselle always knew that they would return one day very soon. Glymet and I traced them back to their den in Hammerfell and got rid of King Jelric and those who know of his secret. By that, both my 6th labor and the Brotherhood assassination contract were complete. However, I was no longer welcome in Warest. Roselle regrets killing her father till this day. Jonrad had that distant look in his eyes filled with sadness over a ruined past. Where did you go next? John asked. We had to complete the job Euthernir gave us. Find the Brotherhood listener and kill her. However, during the pirate attack, the Dark Brotherhood sanctuary was discovered and its members were slaughtered. Glymet heard about another sanctuary here in Skyrim, specifically in Falkreath. Both John and Jellinor narrowed their eyes upon hearing that. You returned to Skyrim back then? Alina asked. No, only Glymet came. I stayed in Bruma because I got tired from traveling. Still, the story of what happened to him in Falkreath was the stuff of horror. Also consider commenting and joining Discord all on this URL. https://linktr ee/Donovel. Patter 0 in latest chapter 590. Chapter 587. Jonrad's Story 8. Also consider commenting and joining Discord all on this URL. https://linktr ee/Donovel. Patter 0 in latest chapter 591. After assassinating King Jelric of Warest at the order of his daughter Queen Roselle for his involvement in the Corsair invasion, Jonrad and Glymet left Warest for good, especially Jonrad, whose existence shall be a reminder for the princess, now queen, of what ended up with her on the throne. As Glymet swore not to enter Skyrim until he finds the secret of the ancient Dragon Knights, he stayed in Cyrodiil, scavenging the old Blade hideouts for clues on their history and helping any ex-Blade agent he meets by hunting down the Thalmor patrols. Glymet, however, headed north to Skyrim and searched Falkreath for 2 weeks until he found the Black Door of the Dark Brotherhood. It was almost impossible to contact the Dark Brotherhood in Cyrodiil, since the group has gone dark for years. The Falkreath Sanctuary, despite being small and semi-independent, was the only lead he had. The one who met Glymet was a dark elf that went by Varlin, and he was an assassin. With the armor of the Dark Brotherhood and the markings of an assassin, Glymet was recognized to be an authentic assassin and was allowed past the doorway to meet with the leader of the sanctuary, a young Nord woman that went by the name Astrid. The meeting between Glymet and Astrid was filled with one bad impression after the other, as Astrid wasn't pleased with an outsider she didn't handpick herself. However, a brother from another sanctuary is still a brother, and no matter how independent she may try to appear, any violation of the code will cause trouble with the listener and the Black Hand, which are the last people Astrid wanted to meet. To earn his keep, Astrid wanted to put Glymet to the test in a rather difficult mission. "All right, newcomer, let's see what you can do. We have a contract on Rathir, the new priest at the Hall of the Dead. There's something odd about that one. Be careful. He's been seen around Grave Concoction's potion shop," she said as she passed the order to Glymet. With so little information to go on, Glymet was supposed to act alone. Relatively speaking, the High Priest in the Hall of the Dead of Falkreath is the High Priest of Arkay, the divine of life and death. Killing such a person is an insult to the Edra, and Glymet was worried over that fact. Killing a priest would surely incur the wrath of its god, wouldn't it? And so the investigation began with Glymet looking for every excuse not to kill the High Priest. If he went to the Hall of the Dead directly, he may run into the High Priest and blow up the mission from more than just one side. So he chose to visit the Grave Concoctions, the alchemy shop in the middle of town where the High Priest was said to have been roaming the other day. With the low probability of encountering the man, Glymet went in and started looking around the shelves of the shop. A customer at this time of day. Looks like I'm in luck. Browse around and pick what you want. Be with you in a jiffy. A woman's voice came from inside the shop as a dark-skinned Redguard looked through the curtains to greet Glymet before going back to whatever she was brewing. "Yes, good day," he replied. "Lovely to see such a collection in a small town like this." "It's a city friend," the woman replied from inside. "Nords here would chase you out with torches and pitchforks if you call their little city a town." Glymet giggled and waited in the shop until the woman came out. "Greetings," he said, bowing to get a tiny bit. "Greetings to you too." She returned the greeting while wiping her hand in a towel and looked at Glymet with a wide smile. The woman was young and beautiful, seemingly talented in her craft as her hair seemed to be well-nourished and her shelves were full of fresh potions. "You find all these ingredients in Falkreath?" Glymet asked. "Isn't it a big forest at the end of the day?" She replied, "But what might interest you?" "A Redguard's hospitality," Glymet said with a laugh. "Tell you what, handsome. You walk 3 months in the direction of the mountain, don't take turns, past the Orsish castle, and you'll find yourself in a big desert land. There you can get all the Redguard hospitality you need. Right here, I exchange hospitality with gold," she said, not in a bad way, but rather in a light mood to prevent the man from even attempting to haggle. Glymet nodded with a smile. "I want to buy some supplies for a skeever infestation in a farm I am working on," he said. "A good excuse to buy poisons," she sighed. "And I will buy some of your finest magical potions as well," he said. "Now we're talking, dear customer," the young woman said. "Name is Zarya. You can request whatever potions you want." "Very well," Glymet said, and handed over a list of the goods he wanted to her as she took it and turned around to face her shelves. After a few seconds, he spoke again. "Do you happen to know of a man that goes by Rathir?" The question fell on Zarya's ears and caused her to halt for a moment before looking at him with expressionless eyes. "Priest of Arkay. Find him at the graveyard," she said, and turned back to her shelves. "Yes, I am not particularly looking for the man. I just met him, and he's quite the odd fellow. Something definitely doesn't feel right about him." As if her patience had run short, Zarya slammed 2 bottles against the counter in annoyance. "I rather appreciate less of a nosy customer. If possible, please pay up and leave," she said. Glymet always regrets having bad speech skills, which he mostly needs John Radford thus. He had to push further for information this time. Really? I heard he's a customer, or some sort of a patron here, maybe a lover? I don't know anything about Rathir. I've already asked you to leave, so I guess we'll have to do this the hard way. Without even raising her hands, Zarya launched her fingers against the bottles, and they flew at Glymet's face, which caused him to retreat immediately. All he could do was to evade one, which exploded behind him in a buff of nasty red smoke, and hit the other one with his dagger, causing a yellow burst of stink. Zarya then threw another bottle, and in that instant, Glymet managed to redirect it with his hand and catch the one that followed before jumping at Zarya and pinning her down. Kya, got you. Help. Not a word. Zarya was pinned to the ground with the blade striking through her floor just beside her neck. Stop, stop. I'll tell you everything. Zarya finally shouted as she submitted to the assassin. Good call. Glymet retreated his weapon and helped Zarya up. Got to be one scary Rathir to scare a woman like you like that. Not as much as you, it seems, she said while touching her neck. Why are you after Rathir? Why should I be after him? I'm merely asking around about the man. Glymet said as he narrowed his eyes. You can say it is some sort of a debt. Rathir? Debts? Zarya caught on to the lie. I don't think he's the kind of guy who deals with loan sharks. He's a high priest for Arkay's sake. He sleeps on a hoard of gold. Running low on patience, Glymet skipped the part where he has to hide his motive and played with the dagger in front of her face. Mind being more helpful? He asked. All right. What do you want to know? She raised her hands and backed off. Where he stays, where he goes, anything about the rascal. Zarya looked at Glymet up and down, and with a slight grin, she nodded. So you want dirt on him? I would appreciate it. Fine. She nodded. Rathir is a necromancer. Interesting, he said. How exactly do you know that? Long ago, he used to invite me to meetings, moonlight walks, whatever you call it. I was invited to his merry little band short after, but when I found out about his practices, I left his cult. Interesting, Glymet smiled. I am glad he's just another scum at the end of the day. He then glanced at Zarya with a malicious intent glimmering in his smirk. What do you want more than what I already told you? She asked in fear. Do you know how to get closer to him without being spotted? Just that question was enough to give her trouble, but now that she thought about it again, this may just be the end of her troubles. If Glymet can just kill Rathir or whatever shit he wants to do to him, it may be very useful. Tell you what, I'll let you borrow my old cult robes to sneak into his ritual if you do a little something for me. I have this new poison I've been dying to try out. Why don't you test it on those cultist scum? I'll take your robes and your potions, milady. When it comes to assassinating, Glymet had a style different than most of those in the business. He likes it more when it is bloody. Normally not a trait for a hero, or maybe a trait for every hero, for his purpose is to purge whatever in his way to achieve his goals. The High Priest of Arkay, Rathir, was such a stepping stone. As Glymet upheld justice in his heart, he didn't want to kill innocents, but Rathir was a betrayer to the divines. If the priest of the god of death succumbs to the god of undeath, they deserve 1,000 deaths over and over again. Glymet would gladly deliver that. He walked into the Worm Cult Shrine, where Rathir was gathering his followers that most of them wore the habits of the priesthood of Arkay. On the main altars were the corpses of aged men who hang the amulets of Arkay around their necks, which reveals what has befallen the real priesthood of Arkay. Rings upon rings of necromancers gathered around the ritual ground, and in their center stood a man giving a heated speech. In this night, the necromancer moon shall arise. On this night, the worm god Manamarco shall accept our sacrifice. By drawing the blood of the zealots to the most hated Arkay, we shall extend our Lord's grasp. The ghosts shall dance, and our Lord will reward us. Rathir shouted and swayed under the moonlight before opening his hands. Gather round, my children. It is time for the ritual to begin. Tonight, the dead walk. Not so fast. Yet a voice spoke. Everyone looked at the necromancer, who rudely interrupted the ritual, and in an instant, Part of the cave fell from the ceiling and targeted Rathir, almost flattening him into a smoothie. Still almost? Your Grace, move! One of the necromancers wearing Arkay's priesthood robes ran towards the man and pushed him out of harm's way as the stones fell. Instantly, blood and gore exploded around where the stones landed, with 7 necromancers dying beneath them at least. Tisk! Glymet clicked his tongue as Rathir seemed unharmed, and he was now exposed before taking the life he was supposed to take. What? You're not one of us. It's the assassin I was warned of, Rathir shouted. Warned? Now that's interesting. Someone would warn the assassination target of an assassin that only the Dark Brotherhood members could have known about. Who in Oblivion would that be? Also consider commenting and joining Discord all on this URL. https://linktr/e/Donovel. Patter 0 in latest chapter 591 that you're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.